second. It's June 1st, 2020, calling the meeting, calling to order this meeting of the Board of Selectmen.
Somebody obviously has a
All right, somebody, yep. Someone's got to shut off their microphone. Is that any better? No. All right, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Section 30A, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Town of Chelmsford Board of Selectmen will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with the right and/or requirement to attend the meeting can be found at the town's website at www.chelmsfordma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so by accessing the Chelmsford Telemedia website at www.chelmsfordtv.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website an audio, video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive recording of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay, and with that, I will start with our public service announcements. Pat, do you want to read those?
Sure. So Trish is not here to do the one about the election? Apparently not. Okay. So on Tuesday, June 2nd is the annual town election. Because of the COVID-19 emergency, all voting will take place at the gym, at the town offices. You requested to park behind the town offices for easy access. And you also requested to wear a mask and bring a black pen for use to mark your ballot. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And also note, if you're watching this on some day other than June 1st, you're probably too late to vote. Absentee voting is already completed. So again, on Tuesday, June 2nd, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. is the annual town election. As far as the bulk item residential collection, that will resume next week, beginning Monday, June 8th. As in the past, if you have one large bulk item, you can put that out with the regular trash, one item per week that will be picked up. But also keep in mind that if you have something that maybe could be used by somebody else, consider donating it to Goodwill or Salvation Army, Wish Project, or something like that, because as you will probably hear later in this meeting, costs for solid waste have increased because the amount of solid waste has increased due to people staying at home more than they were before. So again, you can dispose of one bulk item beginning on June 8th, and also a reminder that the pink bags are being picked up again. So solid waste and recycling is back to what it was several months ago, back to normal.
Just to follow up on that, I do want to remind people that the Wish Project, which operates very locally in Lowell, right around the corner from me in North Chelmsford on Middlesex Street, is still accepting donations and needs stuff to get to people who are in desperate need. So I would encourage people to go there or to look for the Buy Nothing groups that are all over the net. It's pretty easy to pass things on that still have a lot of life in them. And especially if you want to help out people in the area who really, really need it, the Wish Project is a great place to go for families who are on hard times. So I would remind people of that in addition to all the big names that everyone knows. It's nice to go very locally when you can.
Okay. Pete, I don't know if you can chime in. Someone in the chat room had asked the channels for cable. Does anybody know what the channels are that someone could tune in on cable for this, whether it's Comcast or Verizon?
Comcast is 99.
Okay.
I don't know what it is for Verizon. Either 37,
I,
38.
I've never watched one, so not live, not on cable. So. All right. So with that, we will go to open session. And if someone, I'm just going to remind people that if you want to chime in on open session, there's a chat box on the bottom right. You can activate it. Anything that you type in the chat box is recorded, including if you were to text or chat to somebody privately in this room, that also gets recorded for public knowledge later. So anything, again, that goes in the chat box, whether it's between two people or in the general chat box, is recorded and will be is public record. So just keep that in mind. So we have open session. Is there anybody who would like to address open session? They can do that in the chat box. Okay, I don't see anything. If anybody wants to address open session, they can turn on their camera and wave. And still, I don't see any.
I do have a text from Nance Gillies on Groton Road. So if anyone is live and wants to get their stuff out now, that'd be great. Otherwise, I'll read Nance's text.
Okay.
All right. So Nance, and I don't know her number. She's on Groton Road. I'm sorry. We can. Yes. Has been seeing stuff on Facebook to unseat Ken for the way he handled the town manager, but she thinks that a 4-to-1 against couldn't possibly be all of his fault. So she wants to know the answers to some questions. She wants to know if Ken pulled papers, approximately how many people are in town, how many signatures are needed on papers that are pulled, whether or not Ken has special powers as chairman, and then is wondering why there is this, what she says is a coup to unseat you. And then she's wondering if someone from town hall can confirm or deny that this coup was started by 2 town hall employees.
And Ken, since you're on the ballot tomorrow, would you mind if I answer that?
Sorry to interrupt you, Pat.
No, I think I was done.
Okay. All right. So from that, we'll go to incoming correspondence. And the first one is from Everett and Susan Olson. This is a longer document. I was asked that maybe we don't read it into record, but we just accept it as part of the presentation tonight. She didn't necessarily want the whole thing read, but she is, I thought I saw her here, so let me see if I can. Susan, are you there? Because you're unmuted. Well, she's there, but she's unmuted and I don't have a video. Anybody have any recommendations how we handle that?
Maybe she could call the phone number and we could come back to that one.
Okay. Yeah, if she comes back in, we'll come back to it. What about James Hillman? He's next up.
Noticed he was
All
on.
right, James.
Yep,
Yeah, he's unmuted.
Good evening. So I was inquiring about trying to put restricted hours on Hazen Road. It's heavily trafficked road, probably more so than even Concord Road, but it's maybe about 1.5 cars wide.
Mike or Paul, do you want to?
Well, there was, when I had the, oh, can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think Pete Padula gave me screen share capabilities. I'm going to try and share one thing with you. Nope, still disabled.
Hold on, Mike. I'll make you a co-host if you want.
Okay.
Just give it a second. You should now be able to share screen.
Where am I here? Hold on. Can you see that?
No.
Why am I not? I can't see the screen that I want to show you. This is not working, Mr. Chairman. Oh, here we go, sir. So this is the area. This is the intersection up here with Concord and Boston Road. Many of you know the Triangle Service Station is there. And Hazen Road is this diagonal road that runs by Chelmsford Lumber. And when I spoke with Mr. Hillman, his concern is it's cut through traffic and it's a narrow road. As I indicated in my email to the board, I was going to take this to the Traffic and Safety Commission. And we did talk about the pros and cons of doing anything with this road. But as I understand it, we are going to be making some major improvements to the intersection at Boston and Concord Road. So to restrict the flow in any one direction would not be advisable at this time until we make those traffic improvements, which should change the flow and help the ingress egress off of Concord Road. I think the board can make changes to the hours, but the problem is it's going to affect people on Hazen Road. And Mr. Hillman does live on the corner of Concord Road and Hazen. I think we would want to hear from any residents about whether or not they want that length of road restricted in any way, shape, or form, because someone who lives at the Boston Road end of it may be more severely affected than someone at the other end, depending upon which way we put the restrictions, because it would force them to have to go all the way around and come in. So the committee essentially recommended that we hold off doing any major adjustments to the road until we make the traffic improvements at Boston Road and Concord Road, and then see how the traffic patterns work after that. And I'll stop.
Do you know if there's any timeline on the Concord Road?
Yes. I can answer that. The project will be going out to bid on July 4th and should start construction later this year. It's expected to be maybe 1.5 years, so probably next fall of 2021, it should be complete. That's also contingent on having easements approved at town meeting later this month, but hopefully those will be coming forward.
Thanks, Pat.
Yep. And I just want to mention too, Michael Paul, was this request not on your list from last year's meeting that we had at the Senior Center? Because I know Jim had sent an email to Ken, which he read that night, about this issue. I guess I'm surprised that this is the first that you've heard of it.
No, I would have to go back and look at my list. The focus that are the ones that we've been making the changes on have been more in the center and elsewhere. We had ranked some of them at the time, the ones we were working on, and I think that this was grouped in with the improvements to Concord Road. I don't have that list in front of me, Selectman Wojcik. I'm sorry, I can't answer that.
Okay,
I think when we listed the things from the goals from the traffic listening session, we had short-term, midterm, and long-term. And I think this was in group 2, the midterm sort of
okay. So it was there.
approach. And we had labeled it, 1 year, less than 1 year, 2 to 3 years, and then 3 years plus, and sort of how long it was going to take to fix some of the stuff. And I think it was in that second batch, if I remember correct. So is that, James, does that answer your question? Are you all set? Do you have any other questions?
No, I think that pretty much answers it.
Okay, well, thanks for coming. Next is from James Glenn, request to purchase a land in Dalton Road. I know I just let him into the room. I'm gonna assume let's see if I can get him unmuted.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing well, thank you.
All right, so you had sent a question to the town looking to purchase it's between sort of that triangle of land out in front of Coles between Dalton and Stedman, correct?
Yeah, a couple years ago we had purchased the home there, and done some repairs and fixed it up, and the yard's a little tight in the garage area, and we were just looking into the area, and we found that the lot next door was empty, so we just inquired with the town about it.
Okay. Mike and Paul, do you want to speak about that piece of land and maybe a little bit of history?
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, when this request came in, I did speak to Mr. Glenn about it. And so I tried to do some research. Oftentimes, if something's in tax title, we can auction it off or sell it to the abutters. This happened to be town-owned. We went through, I enlisted the help of the assessor's office, and we looked to find ownership of it. And it appears that much of the land in that triangle, which contains the cannon going back towards Mr. Glenn's property, was donated to the town for the purposes of a park, and some of it was taken by eminent domain. However, to the best of our efforts, we couldn't find the actual deeds to the property. But it was clear from some of the information that I got from the Historical Society, again, through the assessor's office, that this was dedicated to be a park in recognition of Mr. Parham. In the email that I sent to both you and Mr. Glenn, and I don't see the attachment here, there was a map. The park essentially consists of 2 parcels, and I did include a photo here. There's 3 photos showing the park from different angles, but the parcel in question that Mr. Glenn is looking for is actually the portion which is adjacent to his property and actually has the sign in it saying Parham Park. Because it was donated to the town for the purposes of the memorial that you have there, and the town has always put a premium on contiguous parcels of open space, I would respectfully request that the town hang on to the parcel at this time, given its designation as both a park and its contiguous nature with the parcel holding the cannon. Oh, there you are. You see it in the blue right now.
Okay. So your recommendation is to hold on to it?
I think that would be the best interest of the community. It is open space. Open space is a premium. And when I sat on the Community Preservation Committee, Mr. Chairman, the goal was always to maintain parcels that were contiguous. The value of the parcel is $14,000. While that may not be insignificant, the fact that it's a part of the park, it was donated by townspeople almost 100 years ago, I think warrants us retaining ownership.
Any comments by the board?
I agree with Michael's comments. I think it's yeah, at this point, it would be best to hold on to that for its historic and preservation purposes.
Well, from my point of view, I can totally understand where the town's coming from. Being that the land would stay open space regardless of really who owns it is, it's okay with me. We could still utilize the park. So,
I think that's very understanding of you. Thank you. But again, where it was, sort of a gift to town and you got that nice park there, the town really works hard to add open space. And I think this would be, a small step backwards. But so I would agree with Mike and Pat, not in favor of letting go of that.
And I think we appreciate his offer to maintain it. But then what if he were to move and we'd have no control over who might be the next person to be the one that might be maintaining it, maybe to the standards that we would expect.
Okay. So do you go by Joshua or James? I feel bad calling you James if that's not how you.
No, it's Joshua Glenn. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So anyway, thank you. I think that suffices for your answer.
Yeah, sure. Thank you guys for taking the time to address the issue.
All right. Thanks, Joshua.
Have a good night.
All right. Yeah, good night. Next up is Mike Donia regarding the governor's orders for restaurant closures. Let me just see. Mike, I don't know if your
I'm
speaker's
here.
on. Okay.
I'm here.
Yep. Do you got your video? Do you have
The video, no, it cannot start. Oh, wait a minute. He let me back on. Hold on. There I am.
There you are. Okay. Let's just see if I can.
Okay. Okay, the reason I sent you a letter regarding this restaurant business is because, as you know, National New Hampshire started outdoor dining over 2 weeks ago, and it has been very successful. It's very hard to get a appointment or a reservation at their restaurants. I realize the weather sometimes has been very unpleasant, kind of cool, you would say, like tonight, that it wouldn't be feasible to make a reservation. But there were many days where the temperature was perfect. Chelmsford, as you know, is closed because of the governor edict. I believe you should override that edict and let the restaurants open up outdoor dining. They have parking lots that they can cut off. They can put tables out there. Chelmsford can get tax relief. The restaurants can make money, and the servers and the bartenders can make money. I don't see any reason why we can't open it. And especially today with all the riots going on, social distancing is out the window. It doesn't even apply anymore. So that was my request, and I hope you act immediately and don't wait for the governor.
Well, Mike, one update that came out tonight, if I understood it right, is that the ABC in the state of Massachusetts is now going to allow for outside seating and servicing of alcohol without the restaurant having to go back and request an amendment to their license. So that's one step in the right direction. Paul, do you want to chime in now?
Yeah, that would be effective next Monday evening, assuming the governor gives the go-ahead on Saturday. The simple answer to the question is we don't have the lawful authority to override the governor's executive order. What cities and towns can do is be more restrictive, but we cannot be less restrictive than the state's executive order. So what's being sought here is we just can't legally do, and would create problems.
Well,
yeah, I think what
how
Mike,
does the mayor of Boston not do what Charlie Baker wants regarding construction? He postponed it a week. He didn't open it up. So why can't we open up?
We're not Boston.
No, but the
Can't
point is
answer for Marty Walsh.
right, but the answer is that was more restrictive, not less restrictive. The mayor of Boston could not be less restrictive than the governor. Neither can the town of Chelmsford. That's my point. We could be more restrictive. For example, we could keep restaurants closed through July if that's what the community decided to do. But we cannot be less restrictive than what the governor's executive order is allowing.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Let's, if everybody just give me 1 second, I got some text coming in. All right. Just again, remind people if you're not on to mute your microphones. I guess people are getting a little bit of feedback as we're talking. And if we could just do that, then that'd be helpful for the people at home. We back to the agenda here.
Kenny,
Yes.
before we get off this thing, I'm kind of surprised. Maybe Sue Olson had a problem, but I think it's imperative that we get involved with this situation up there between all the streets. I don't know what's happening with this potential road. I know about that other letter, but I mean, if we just let it sit there, it's never going to get resolved. And I mean, I'd be willing to help in any way, either with the town hall or with anybody. It doesn't matter who, and with the residents. I'd be happy to speak with the residents up there. I mean, there's 3 of us are from North Chelmsford, and we got probably 200 residents that are pretty, and I know we're kind of handcuffed a little bit by laws, et cetera, but maybe if we went up there and explained it. I know you had an open session when I was in the hospital one time, but I'd be happy to meet with these people. And also I had a complaint regarding a couple things. One was a big piece of iron or something. I guess it belongs to the gas company on Route 40. And somebody was complaining about that. And I did take a ride up there on the way home. The piece does have a piece that comes up. And I know somebody was making a gas company to see how quickly they could get that resolved. But, and then
George, the way you're holding your phone, I think you're covering your mic.
Okay, probably. What do I know? But anyway, the other piece was the salt yard up there is being filled allegedly with some debris, some dead animals, etc. I don't know if that's true. I'm only telling you I got a phone call as I came in the house this evening from a resident. I told the resident that I would meet with them. And if anybody would like to join me, or if the residents out there would like to get in touch with me, my number is 978-954-1002. I'd be happy to meet. And if Mike wants to come with me, or you want to come with me, or Virginia, or Emily, or Pat, or anybody else. I mean, I just want those people to know that we care about them and we're trying to help. Our hands are tied. We all know that. But, they're killing, the roads are being killed up there. And, I guess there was somebody up there from conservation today. There was somebody up there the other day from most of that stuff is all in Westfitch once you get up the driveway, and they were checking the scales, et cetera, et cetera. And, the Westfitch building people said there was no problem. They didn't even need a permit. I'm only telling you what little bits and pieces I'm picking up, okay, from people. So, but I'd be happy to help out if we could somehow, if we're still entertaining putting that road in. I mean, we could hopefully save somebody's life, but and a lot of aggravation and a lot of wear and tear on our roads, et cetera. So I'd like to somehow bring this to a head in the next week or two.
What I'd like to see is this as a formal agenda item where we talk about the points that Susan Olson makes in her letter, and where we talk about the other options that you guys have been exploring, because we've never had a formal board discussion about it. And I think that we owe people some transparency with it, and some acknowledgement that we have to be careful about not just moving the problem to another neighborhood.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a lot of uneasiness right now because it hasn't been out on the table. We haven't been giving people an opportunity for public input. Sue talks about a couple of past points that were brought up that were never really answered about other alternatives. And, I think that we also need to have the discussion about other options. Maybe there's more than one option that need to be explored simultaneously and implemented even simultaneously. But, my understanding is that because of I was under the impression that because of some of the commercial development, non-residential development that's going on up at exit 34, that maybe there is more receptivity to routing traffic that way as a second alternative. So I don't know that this is a one answer solution. And I think that people are hearing bits and pieces of different things, and we have never come together. Mike gave a status report when we asked for it, an interim status report of what the traffic committee was doing. But since we had that meeting in July, we've never come together as a board to actually talk about all these different alternatives. And so I think that we owe that to people to put it out there so that they understand what we're doing. And I think that we should, with that, look at some of the questions that Sue Olson posed in her letter and answer them.
You want to do that tonight?
I don't know that we can do it tonight.
Well, I mean, the letter's there, so it's technically there.
But so what was on the agenda is Sue Olson's letter, which has nothing to do with even what George is talking about. That's not even, that content isn't even in the letter. So this the holistic discussion of the options and where do we stand and is it worth revisiting any, and where does this other idea of the road stand? I mean, I saw some emails or something that said, if we can't put a road in, let's just send all the trucks down Route 40 from the Westford line to Route 3. Well, there are children and people who also live there. So, I think we need to get this out in the open and have the discussion holistically of the alternatives and whether there's anything else that should be revisited as well.
So for the next meeting, why don't we make the Route 40 one of the big talking points, and we'll go through and identify.
Ken, I'm going to ask that it not just be Route 40. I'm going to ask that it be the traffic, and that even these open items or the things that are in Sue's letter that are considered open items, at least in her mind as a resident, maybe they're not open anymore. I don't know, but I'm going to ask that the whole thing be put on the agenda.
That's fair, Virginia. We can work together to carve up the agenda so that all the items. And what we'll do is probably maybe if everybody could just email me their thoughts on what they'd like to see covered in that, on the North Chelmsford area up there, we can put together for the next meeting an agenda that makes everybody happy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pat, are you okay with that?
Yep.
I still see Sue Olson's name here. Is she able to speak?
I don't have it doesn't say there's a microphone connected to her.
Okay.
And there's no video either. Sue, are you there? No. Okay. The last item in our incoming correspondence was an email from Stanley Mazur. How do you say his last name? Mazur? Is it?
Zurchek.
Okay. Let me just get that open. And I guess I can screen share the let me see if I can do this. I can screen share his letter. Maybe I can't. Oh, here we go. Can you see his letter?
Yes.
All right. Do you see his letter?
Yes.
All right. And now I can't. So I guess the gist of the letter is that he wanted to understand what the policy and procedures are for when a complaint comes into town hall on a personnel matter, I think is what he's getting at there. Does anybody want to, he declined to be on the meeting tonight, so I don't know if anybody wants to speak about this or talk about it, address it in any way.
The way I interpreted the letter is he's asking, is there a procedure or that's documented for how complaints are handled? And I mean, that's under Paul's purview, right? So I don't know. Paul?
Yeah. As I responded to Mr. Mazurek, there is no public document or formal procedure that takes place. And it's and he actually uses the word public servants. He writes that complaint proceeds to express dissatisfaction and incompetence with their public servants. Basically, if anything comes in and has come in, we respond. You know, just very, very similar to what the board's doing this evening. Somebody writes a letter or somebody makes a call in or text or email, what have you, we respond to it. But there is no formal procedure in the general government as a whole in terms of a form or something that somebody has to fill out.
Okay. Is there, Paul, is there, are there forms of do towns have procedures in place that are written that, or is this just something that's not municipally done, or?
There's a formal procedure, for example, in the police department. As you can imagine, you know, with the nature of that department, there's a formal complaint procedure for an officer. But there is no general form if somebody has a complaint or concern that I've seen in the town in the 13 years that I've been here, or even one that was in existence upon my arrival. Again, if something comes in, we respond to it usually very timely. And then the other form that is a form is the public records process. And as we know, Mr. Mazurek is very familiar with that process, and his inquiries are responded timely.
So I guess the only question I'd be left with is, should there be something, even if it's not like the details of what you do? Some of this is personnel matters and those should stay private, I believe. But if somebody files a complaint, is there, you know, should there be something that says they at least get something back acknowledging that it was received and, you know, that it's going to be processed according to whatever your personnel procedures are? And I don't know the answer to that, but I thought that's what I was interpreting was being asked for out of this, is just something that says we're tracking those complaints and we're doing something to disposition.
So I'm actually wondering about this from a human resources point of view, where that might count as a record against an employee. So if you've got an employee or a public servant who has had a complaint issued against them, and then it becomes public record that, you know, whatever, person X has had 15 complaints against them, it could be that those are very serious complaints, and it could be, you know, I don't know, it's just something silly. And without a way to tell what those are, that can actually follow someone around and then become a liability against them. So if they're looking for another job and they get a Google search and they see, oh, this person has had 15 complaints against them in their role as a public servant, it may just be that this person, you know, didn't stop for long enough at a stop sign. It was only a second and a half instead of 2, you know. I mean, it's just, it's that thing where without details that may not be anyone's business, it could lead to very serious consequences. And so I wonder whether having specific notifications or just an aggregate. This week we received 15 complaints. Last week we received 12. I don't even know that's an. It's hard to tell. I'd actually like to hear from someone with knowledge of HR laws around that.
Okay.
Again,
I just don't even know if this is in our purview as a board. Go ahead, Paul. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I just don't know if it's a problem. Again, I think if we were not responding to complaints, they'd be coming to you as a board saying my concerns aren't being responded to, and I don't think that's happening. I think what may be happening is oftentimes we get from some residents, very rare, we get some instances where inquiries are made as a form of harassment, and I think that's the concern about documenting and then putting out there a list. Well, we had 10 complaints this week. Well, it may be a means of trying to harass a public official or town employee and so forth. And I think if one looks at our public record inquiries, I think perhaps one in some instances can draw those conclusions.
I agree. That's a really good point. And having been privy to some of the emails that come in requesting things that are full of accusations and conspiracy theories and rants, I mean, people are going to request what they want to request. And I do think that sometimes it's intentional harassment. And so I just think that publicizing that, Colonel Mustard has gotten 15 complaints or whatever is just it's not the right course of action, because without context, you have no idea whether or not you've got someone out to promote wild stories.
Well, Emily, I think, or even Paul, I think, so I know in the last 3 years, I've had 2, possibly 3 situations where someone said to me, hey, I sent something into town hall with a complaint and I never got anything back. I didn't get a response that they received it. I didn't get anything in writing that acknowledged the complaint. And if so, when I could expect a response, and I've sort of just been left in limbo. I agree with Paul. That's probably not a sign that it's a problem. If there was only 2, I know of 2, and I'm trying to think, I want to say there was 3, but that's only 1 a year. And I could understand that if it maybe wasn't understood as a complaint, it didn't get logged as a complaint. I'm not thinking that we're trying to solve a problem. I'm just wondering if maybe there should be something in place that says if someone files a complaint, in town hall, that'll just a generic letter goes out that says we received your complaint's been acknowledged, has a date on the letter and says, you'll have some result in the next 2 weeks, or some reply in the next 2 weeks, or follow up in the next 2 weeks. Just a simple courtesy letter that just acknowledges it was received and what the action will be and when they can expect it. I'm not looking to track it, not really looking to track who got the complaint or what it was about, but just sort of a procedure that it was received and you just set the expectation of what the end result will be in a letter.
Again,
what kind of response would you anticipate? Like if there's like some sort of action in a form letter, what specifically would you anticipate that looking like?
Well, I mean, it can be whatever you want it to be. You could say, we received your complaint. It's been logged in town hall. We will review it in the next 2 weeks. And if we find reason for response, you'll hear from us in the next 2 weeks. It could be that simple, that ambiguous. I get those all the time. When you have a complaint against a product, or you send an email to someone because you're not happy with the service, you still get an acknowledgement back that says we acknowledge that you've sent something to us and it'll be reviewed. And if we find reason for action, you'll hear from us within the next 2 weeks. I just wonder, the 2 people that come to my mind were people who sent something in and said to me, I don't even know if anybody got it. I didn't get a response. And then when it was resolved, they didn't even get a letter telling them what the resolution was, and they were still wondering what was going on. So that's all. It's more of a set the expectation courtesy type thing where you acknowledge it was received and that the town's looking at it. And if there's reason for response, we'll let you know. Paul, you're muted. Paul, you're muted.
I think, Ken, that's what, Mr. Chairman, that's what's happening, because if it's happening only once a year or so, then generally that's probably what's taking place. And sometimes things fall through the cracks or get missed or what have you. So I agree with fully what you're saying. I said, I just believe that practice is happening.
Okay.
You know.
So that's the practice then that we can answer.
Yeah.
Answer them with there isn't.
Yeah. And my sense is, again, if something doesn't happen, then you bring it to the superior. So if you make a concern to the particular department, you don't get a response within a reasonable period or acknowledgement, then you bring it up to the manager's office. And if it goes to the manager's office and we don't respond, then they bring it to the Board of Selectmen. And I think, so I think there is a hierarchy, and I think there is a means for redress in terms of if they don't get a response.
All right. So that's the actual answer then, is that you do acknowledge that when a complaint comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying? And then it gets acknowledged and then goes to the manager of the department. If it doesn't get resolved to the resident satisfaction, they can then bring it to the town manager's attention. And then if that doesn't get resolved, they can bring it to our attention. But each step of the way, that's communicated back to them.
Well, what I'm saying is that I think that's what's happening in practice. They may not be an instant acknowledgement that day, but maybe wherever the thing comes in, they're getting an answer within a reasonable time period, 2 or 3 days. And then again, if they're not getting anything and you say they don't hear anything back, then you bring it to the next level. But like I said, I don't think this is a widespread phenomenon. But I'm not going to certain things don't fall through the cracks. But I think that's practice.
I'm just trying to formulate an answer. So the answer is there's no written response that goes out. The town hall addresses it within 2 to 3 days. If it doesn't get addressed, then chances are we'll hear about it, or you'll hear about it, and then we'll hear about it.
Right.
So there's nothing in writing, but it's just the hope that in 2 or 3 days it gets reviewed and responded to, and then if it falls through the cracks, it comes up to us. Yeah. Okay. So that's the procedure. The question is, maybe tonight or at a later date, I don't know what the board wants to do. We address that procedure if you want something different, but that's the answer to his question, I guess.
So are you suggesting we put that in writing and just have it as the procedure, or just say that's the procedure?
Virginia, I think as you
That's up
mentioned
to Paul.
earlier in this discussion, it is Paul's call
Yeah.
on.
Okay.
So if he's comfortable with that procedure, that's his procedure, and we leave it there. Unless we talk at a later date that we want it changed, but that's all right. Any other comments or questions? All right, with that, it brings us to the public hearings. The first one is the National Grid and Verizon.
We have committee vacancies.
Committee vacancies.
Committee vacancies.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yep.
Okay, as of today, we have the following vacancies. We have 1 vacancy on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, 1 vacancy on the Center Village Master Plan Implementation Committee, 2 vacancies on the Community Action Program Committee, 1 vacancy on the Conservation Commission, 5 vacancies on the Council on Aging for associate member positions. Cultural Council can have up to 21 total members. There are many vacancies there. 1 vacancy on the Energy Conservation Committee, 4 vacancies on the Holiday Decorating Committee, 2 vacancies on the Middlesex Canal Commission. The Parade Committee welcomes all applicants. There's 1 vacancy on the Permanent Building Committee, 1 vacancy on the Personnel Board, 5 vacancies on the Public Celebrations Committee, 1 vacancy on the Recycling Committee, 2 vacancies on the Skate Park Committee, 2 vacancies on the Tree Committee. If you're interested in applying for any of these positions, you can fill out an application online or at the town manager's office. And also note that as of the end of this month, there are many committee positions that will be opening up as we appoint and the town manager appoints and reappoints members to those committees, so there will be more openings. If you're interested, be sure to take a look at that and tell the appropriate people that you're interested in those positions. Thank you.
Okay, and now that will bring us to public hearings. National Grid and Verizon poll petition, Gorham Street and Columbus Ave. And is there someone here from National Grid or Verizon?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Joe.
Hi, it's John Tilly, National Grid Electric. I'm here for the petition of Columbus Ave and Gorham Street. If anybody has any questions.
Hi, Joe. Sean McDonough. I own the property on the corner of Gorham and Columbus Ave.
Oh, hi, Sean. How you doing?
Not too bad. Yourself?
Not too bad.
Keeping well. I was wondering if there's any way that we could push pole P150 to the other side of Columbus Street, kind of, you know, more or less where that arrow is, but that says Columbus Ave. Reason being is the lot on the corner of Gorham and Columbus is heavily forested, lots of trees, and the other side is basically public land, and it's parallel to 495, and there's no large trees there. I just feel that we're gonna end up with a problem with the trees again, putting the pole. Maybe we could go from the pole P2 to a pole where the Columbus Ave arrow is, and then to the other pole P2 that is farther down. From P2 on Gorham Street to P2 on Columbus Ave at a diagonal.
So we could definitely look at that. I was out there. I think the pole 2 would cut across the property of the public land. So
Right.
we would need to petition that, or we would need to put the pole, or we would have to redo the pole to have it aligned to get across, make it straight going down Columbus Ave, like we were gonna do with 8.5.
Right.
It's the same idea. You don't want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
closer with primary over somebody's property. Now, if it's public land, it's the cities. It's
I
not
believe-
built upon.
Yep.
We don't have as big of an issue. You also have issues of anchoring, right? So going across, obviously, you have pull, right? So coming straight across, you have a different pull. But if you really want to do it, we could come back out and look at it. We would have to I believe we would have to re-petition this Chelmsford though for it. I don't know unless they could do it with, unless they could approve it with, if this happens. I don't know. That's not my call.
Members
Is
of the
it
board-
possible to move it across the street and put an anchor in and come back across? We could do that.
Yeah, I think it's totally possible because it's
We could do that. We could put we could even either move pole 2 over to the corner and then come straight down and then cross over to the other pole 2. That's on Columbus Ave.
Yeah,
Excuse me, there's a comment from Christina that she thinks the land, it's state land adjacent to the highway.
Okay.
Does anyone know?
I don't know offhand if we are the state, because it crosses right near the highway.
I would think the town has a setback. There's neither sidewalks on either side of the street. So I'd imagine the town has the setback for the sidewalk where they can locate the pole on the highway side of the street.
There must be some easement there.
Right.
You know,
Yep, we could definitely check into that as National Grid. We could look in, and even if it was state-owned, it would really just be permanent in the state if they own it. But I would imagine from where it is, it would be Chelmsford would own it.
Mr.
Excuse me.
Chair. So in the memo from Steve Johnley, it talked about potential need of Mass DOT approval. Could DPW speak to that if it's related to this conversation?
Let's see, Gary.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got
No.
you, Gary.
Yep. I'm not 100% sure. Steve did do the review of that, and if he wrote in it needs DOT approval, and I would believe it does. Secondly, we would have to relook at the other side of the road and see exactly what property it is, what the setback would be to move forward, which can be done with National Grid. So at this point in time, I would just say that we'd have to relook at this if it's going to be reworked.
Gary, that's a very narrow street to begin with, even though it's a short cul-de-sac. It's a very narrow street. I would rather see it go underground and then cross over the street underground as opposed to a pole, because it's two cars going in, and you could have an accident very easily. You know what I mean?
George, I was there today, actually, taking a look at it, and first of all, the existing pole, P1 is, and then P2, and then they were proposing a P1-50. Those existing poles are off the road far enough, and I believe that P50 is just in line, 1-50 is in line with P2. So I don't think we're creating or changing anything that's currently there, and I believe if we did get to move to the other side of Columbus, I would think we'd have to offset it the same way, so that we're, not in line in that. It is a narrow street. It is a dead-end street, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
So I know traffic is not, it's not a heavily trafficked road.
Right, but a fire truck or something like that, if they, you know what I'm saying? It's just, you guys know the business better than me. I just thought if it went underground and then they crossed over underground, it would be, maybe a lot more safe. I don't know. That's possible.
That would have to be something that we could view out there with National Grid.
Right.
Yep.
Just
Yeah.
2 cents worth. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Absolutely, Sean. If you want, I could have Paul meet you out there. I'll have him give you a call, and we could look this over if you're not happy with the location. But we could definitely work with you and the DPW to
I
do
just
what
feel-
makes you happy. We don't want to do anything if everybody's not happy.
Right. I just feel like if it was on the other side, there'd never be any problems with, tree. Like you guys had it on the Gorham Street side, you had to take down 2 large trees this year. And there's large trees all along on the corner of Gorham and Columbus Ave. Whereas
Yeah,
on the state side, there's no trees, and it slopes off so much that there'll never be a tree problem, I wouldn't think.
Yeah,
When do
we
you
were-
want to meet up? How should we proceed from here?
So what I'll do is, Sean, I got your, I don't want to say anything, but I got a
Yeah.
901 number. I could have Paul call you, and we could have him meet you out there.
Okay.
He's our guy for that for Chelmsford, and he'll meet you on site and walk you through with it. You guys
Okay.
can walk through it, and and then we'll re-petition the city, or Chelmsford, or re-petition the state, whoever's property it is. 'Cause if it's a state property, we would just go through the state and we would apply to the state to install the pole.
Members of the board, if it's on Chelmsford property, do you have any objection to relocating on the other side of the street? If that's the way it works out?
If our DPW says it can be done and they're okay with it, I would say I would be okay with it.
I would think we would have to re-advertise. There might be other people that would like it to be on
Yep.
the side where they're showing it.
Right,
Right.
there'll be a different set of abutters,
Correct. Maybe.
maybe.
Yeah,
I don't think so. I don't think
yeah,
anybody
there's just a state highway.
Yeah, it's a state highway. I don't think there's any
Right.
other notice.
can build anything.
We're just trying to make it more, rather than come back and bother you again.
Well, I think you're gonna have to no matter what.
Okay, all right. That's no problem.
Is that what you'd like to do, Sean? And
Yeah, Joe.
I could definitely do that for you, and I'll have Paul give you a call.
Very good.
Excellent, excellent. Whatever makes everybody happy, the town, the state, you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Joe.
Anytime. If anybody else needs anything else, let me know.
All right.
Okay.
Well, if you can get rid of any of our double poles in town, that'd be great.
They're getting there.
If you have an issue with that, I could have the business service person for your area to reach out to you and definitely contact you.
Well, we have one on,
Yeah, that'd be great.
If
we
you
have one on
have,
Richardson Road. We have one on Richardson Road across from the old DPW site. That's ready to come down. It's got a big load on it. And then there's another one up on Main Street, I believe. So it would be nice if somebody could,
yeah, we'll reach out. What we'll do is we'll have I'll double check to see who's running Chelmsford, and we'll have them reach out to the city clerk. Or is there anybody in particular you want me to have them reach out to?
oh, I mean, they can reach out to, Mike McCall or Mr. Cohen if they like. It's no problem. They can call me, George Dixon. I'll show them where the poles are,
Sure, George. Not a problem. George Dixon.
Yes, sir.
We can take care of that for you. I'll have them reach out to you. And,
Thank you.
And you can tell them what poles are the issue, and if it's National Grid that's on the old pole, you will definitely work with that.
Right. Thank you.
There
Not a
is
problem.
There is a tree branch on a wire at the corner of Wright and Princeton, and I've reported it like 3 times, and nobody's but it's actually causing the wire to sag. So it's like on the wire. I'm pretty sure that's not safe, but it's a dead limb. So if you're out chopping tree branches, that might be a good one.
Branch. Right in Princeton.
Right in Princeton, and that's
Just-
right as in WRIGHT.
Yeah, I figured what?
Just below the North Town Hall, the community center, whatever it is.
Yeah, I'll make sure they ask about that too, and they can get forestry involved. And they can take a look at it to make sure that we can cut it. We never want to cut trees without.
It's a
making
dead
sure
branch, though.
everybody's
like,
okay with
Nobody's going to be. My daughter calls it the haunted tree. She's convinced there are ghosts in it. She loves it at Halloween. So
Yeah,
this is not live wood that needs to be preserved. So
it. Okay, that's what I'm saying. We have to be careful what we cut. We want to make sure everybody's happy. It's a very sensitive area.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's a very sensitive area. We try to be careful. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, you've got an open public hearing. You're going to continue it, or are you going to go from here?
Well, we're not, I guess we'd have to continue it and have you come back and tell us if what Sean is asking can be done.
Sure.
Is it a continuation, or do you close it and open a new one if it's a different layout?
I don't know what they're gonna come back with.
Right.
And I don't know.
If it changed, we would
To Pat's point, there's a possibility that you have to issue another notice, that's a new public hearing, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Why would we, a new public notice? Because of,
If you're moving the polls from where the current layout is, you might have to notify a different set of people. I think was Pat's point. I'm not going to speak for Pat. You can speak.
Well, just if it's a different layout, two people might have a different opinion of it than what was presented, and what they received in their abutters notification. But Ken, I think you also want to be sure that there's not anybody else in the audience that wants to speak to this before we would close or continue.
Yeah, I've been watching the chat box, which nobody has their cameras on, so it's really, if they want to speak, they gotta put it in the chat box, and nothing's come up yet. So if anybody does want to make a point on this, you have to enter it in the chat box so we can see it. And again, there's nobody typing, so.
Joe, do you think we could get it all resolved before the next meeting?
Well, if it's a state permit, it would be different, right? So we would petition the state.
If it was a state permit, we would not be coming back to the
exactly
council.
Exactly. If it was a town, Paul would probably, if you guys could meet out there pretty soon, Paul could get the petition fixed up pretty fast because it's already basically done.
Yeah.
And then
in the
what
next meeting,
happens, though,
what members of the board, when is the next meeting?
14th,
18th,
15th.
Of June?
15th of June, you're right.
15th of
yeah,
June,
because don't you need 2 weeks to advertise though if we change the poll?
If
Something
it's
like
going
that.
to be a new one,
Yeah, you have to advertise, so it wouldn't be the next meeting.
So it'd be the following meeting, say.
It'd be the following meeting because they wouldn't have enough time to advertise.
Yeah. So could we
Who's the chairman here?
It's all right. They seem to be doing a fine job.
Could we continue it to the?
We'd probably be looking at about a month out.
Yeah, would that be possible to continue it to then?
Well, again, the problem is if it is state and the poll's going to change and we have to alert a different set of abutters, then it's a new hearing. So I think what we're better off doing is closing this hearing and then coming back.
If we close this hearing, he'll have to submit a new one regardless. If we continue it, then if he has to submit another one, we could close this one and open the next one at the same time.
Can you make an amendment to can you make a master plan as part of the same hearing, or do you have to have a different hearing?
Well, you have to alert different abutters, George.
There's only 2, I believe, right? So that they.
So if they decide to change nothing, then to Pat's point, if it's continued, we're still okay.
Yes, we should continue.
Yeah, I think we should continue. And we could either continue it till the 15th or we could continue it to our first July meeting, whenever that's going to be.
The first July meeting sounds more sensible.
Okay, thank you, Sean. I appreciate that.
Your next meeting may be June 29th. That's 2 weeks after the 15th.
Oh, okay. How's that sound, Joe?
Yeah, it sounds fine. Like I said, I could definitely have Paul meet you by then and we can look at it, see exactly what you need to do. And I'm sure we can work something out. It's just a matter of timing and getting the proper, the proper advertisement and to get it through. But I mean, we could definitely work with you on it.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right, so do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we continue the public hearing on the poll petition for National Grid at Gorham Street and Columbus Avenue to
June 29
at 7 p.m.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Emily,
Aye.
Pat,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Okay, so that brings us to item 7, the restaurants and temporary outdoor seating. Paul and Mike, you want to discuss that?
Mr. Chairman, I believe Christina Bruce is on the call, and she's been the one sort of heading this effort and sort of fielding the licensing inquiries. If you could unmute her and allow her to address the
Yes.
board on it.
Yep, she's unmuted. She's live. There she is. Welcome, Christina.
Hello, good evening, Mr. Chairman. So as you know, we are preparing for restaurants to be able to resume on-premises consumption. The state has said that they will be allowed to do so in the form of outdoor seating only at the beginning of phase 2, which may begin as early as Monday, June 8th. In preparation of this issue, the town manager and I have been working with various departments in town, including our business development director, our building department, health department, fire department, police, community development, in order to come up with a streamlined process for restaurants to expand existing outdoor seating or add new outdoor seating, perhaps in non-conventional areas such as tents on lawns, parking lots, etc. Today, the governor signed an order stating that for alcohol licenses that are seeking to make amendments for outdoor seating, local licensing authorities will be granted the authority to go ahead and approve those without the usual legal requirements of an advertised public hearing and a butter notification, and then subsequent approval by the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission. We had been awaiting results of pending legislation, and it would seem that the governor's order today and subsequent advisory by the ABCC has taken precedence over that pending legislation. So we have about 80 restaurants. Some of them already have existing outdoor seating. We have gotten a lot of communication from these folks. They are scrambling, trying to figure out how they're going to be able to resume anything near normal operations. Even once indoor seating becomes allowed by the state, everyone seems to be anticipating that customers are going to be more comfortable with outdoor seating. And they'll want to have this sort of thing in place as soon as possible throughout the summer season. The state guidance has said that temporary outdoor seating on these licenses will be valid through November 1st. So we would be seeking to do something that would line up with that. So in your packets, you have a draft of the guidance that we have put together with the minimum requirements that the various departments would need to see for outdoor seating. And this awaits input from the Board of Selectmen regarding any additional requirements you might have and what process you may want for approval, given that you will now have unilateral authority without needing state approval for those that have the alcohol licenses. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
You're muted, Ken.
Hold on. My only comment to that is, I mean, I would like to see it as easy as possible, obviously, for the restaurants to get back up and running. So I wouldn't want to add anything from a board standpoint, and if anything, maybe make sure the other boards in town that have to give approval are keeping in mind that these restaurants really could possibly be on the brink, and getting them open as fast as possible is kind of paramount.
Who would else?
Just my
Excuse me, Ken. Who else would be involved? The building inspector and the board?
You've got the fire chief, Police Department as well, Board of Health.
Just for the outside,
Yes, yes.
okay.
So
Hey.
Christina, I'm sorry, I thought you were done, George.
Go ahead, no problem.
No, go ahead, finish.
No, I was gonna say, you know, the 6 feet, 6 foot, you know, spacing and stuff like that, they'd have to mark that out for them, et cetera, before the inspection. Is that how it would have to be?
So the application process in the guidance that we've drafted would involve submission of a site plan, which would mark all distances, location of seating, tents, distances to the building. ADA compliance would still need to be met from all areas. And
Okay.
that would be inspected. We're looking to put together a joint inspection team where you know, perhaps one member of the team could go and take care of the inspection for all the involved departments.
That would be great. Thank you.
You're welcome. I would also say I haven't gotten a ton of information, given that this is such a brief timeline that we're getting this information, but there are some cities and towns where the local licensing authority, their boards of selectmen, have just said that they will let administration take care of all aspects of approval. So it really, we would need to know from the board whether you will want to, as you typically would under normal circumstances, whether you would want to hold a hearing for each of these applications or whether you would like to just give blanket consent at this point.
I guess my opinion on it, I don't think a hearing would be required. As you said, that's, you know, what was issued today said we don't have to do it. I think we should consider, though, the hours of operation and the entertainment, as you mentioned in the memo that you sent. I don't, you know, we do have some establishments that have licenses that run midnight and later. Perhaps we should have some, you know, cutoff at 10 p.m. or something, except with permission, say, of this board or under special circumstances. Maybe we should consider something like that.
Well, can we make so that we basically don't get involved, but tell the building inspector, you know, they have to, you know, be closing at 10 or 9 or something, just to follow. I just don't want each one to have to come to us for hours of operation and slow the process down. If we could make it part of the caveat of the total package, so that the one person going out and getting licensing authority for everybody understands that they have to be closed up and people out of the parking lots by, say, 10 o'clock at night, or.
I think Pat was suggesting they would come to us by exception.
Right, so later than that, right.
Okay, so only if someone wanted to go later, they came to us?
Well, if it's early, yeah. Why, do you think
Okay.
earlier? I mean,
No,
are you
no,
saying, you saying they should come to us for everyone? Initially, I was saying, I was gonna suggest, yeah, that they let us at least know that they're gonna do this, and whoever's responsible for us, let us know. And if we have some issue, obviously we can address it. But yeah, to make a, you know, a restaurant that's in a situation that many of them are in right now, wait potentially 2 weeks before we have a meeting that we could discuss it, could be unreasonable.
Yeah, I think we're saying the same thing. I just, if you make it a standard hours, have it approved by building inspector, board of health, whoever. I don't want to have to touch it. And if someone has a problem, then they can come to us.
I agree with that.
And I mean, the police department might want to weigh in on the hours of operation just based on what they've been seeing around town during the evenings and things. So the other point you made, Pat, is there, you know, Christina put in the draft document, do we want to consider whether they have entertainment or are there constraints on that? And that brought to question not only, so if you're considering entertainment, you know, some of these restaurants are near homes and some of them are just near other commercial businesses. So I think there is some consideration given to that. But the question that it really spawned in my mind was, I had heard at one point that even for indoor dining, I'm not sure if it was Massachusetts or other states, there was consideration being given to like no music, because that requires people to speak up over the music and increases the chance of having germs spray from individuals' mouths. So I think we have, is there any constraint around that you've seen, Christina? Because I wasn't seeing it in the documentation that you had sent out.
I don't
Is that
think that
going to be mandated by the state, or is that a decision that we have to make on entertainment?
I don't recall seeing that in the state guidelines, although it is quite detailed, so I may have missed it, but I don't recall seeing guidance on the entertainment.
So I mean, just the part about people having to speak up and project their voices, like choirs getting sick, that was the whole rationale that I heard around not having music. That may be something that the Board of Health needs to weigh in on, because I think they'd be much more equipped to make that kind of call than we would.
Yeah,
Well,
I think again, we should just leave it to the other boards and towns to do their expertise.
Well, I'm only bringing it up because it was in the suggestions for the Board of Selectmen. So,
right.
So typically, entertainment, that is something that is approved by the selectmen with the common victualler or alcohol license.
right.
There are some establishments that already have outdoor seating and do have entertainment licenses. None come to mind that have entertainment outside on a normal basis. I know that Moonstones did some last season, but they came to the board
Right,
with that
they did.
request to do that. Yeah.
So what if we did no live outdoor entertainment without approval of the Board of Selectmen, and then just have the board delegate the approval authority for these licenses and outdoor seating, as well as seating on the town's right of way? It could be a sidewalk and so forth where they need a permission from the town as well. To delegate that to the town manager, and then what I would do is upon issuance of approval, I would immediately notify you that day. So that way you're kept up to date as to how this process is going so that it's done in a timely manner. So we do it just like the similar sign-off sheet like you would receive, and then we'd approve it as it's completed, and then you'd be immediately notified and provided with a copy of the documentation of what's been approved. With the understanding is that this 10 p.m. Closing requirement for outdoor seating, and that there be no live entertainment unless they obtain a approval from the Board of Selectmen.
That sounds reasonable to me.
Yep, sounds reasonable to me.
So do we want a motion?
Do you need a motion, Christina?
Procedurally, I will leave that question to someone else.
Yes, there should be a vote of the board delegating authority.
Okay, I will then make a motion that we approve outdoor seating as presented in the governor's guidance submitted on June 1st, 2020, with the limit of 10 p.m. outdoor seating of 10 p.m. unless approved in advance by the Board of Selectmen, and no live entertainment allowed outdoors except with the approval of the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
And I will vote aye. All right, thank you, Christina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That will bring us to item 8 on the agenda, which is reports and presentations. First one up is Jerry Hall. We had a petition for a town warrant article pertaining to air quality studies.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just want the record to reflect I'm going to mute and turn my video off to recuse myself from this topic.
Okay. How do we let you know when we're done? You're muted.
I can still hear you. I just don't want to be part of the conversation.
Oh,
So-
okay, all right. See if we can get Jerry Hall on. Jerry,
Good evening. You see me now?
we can. Good evening.
Thank you for this opportunity to present to you the rationale for the citizens petition for air quality studies. Last October, just before town meeting, the Board of Health issued a letter to the Planning Board on October 8th, 2019, in opposition to Article 23, the senior housing overlay, declaring that areas near asphalt plants could be hazardous to certain population segments. We, the neighbors of such plants, went to the Board of Health seeking specific answers as to how dangerous and at what distances. We asked for scientific studies to back their claims. They had none. Then we asked if they would conduct some, and we were told it was beyond their scope and funding. We'd like answers to our health and safety questions raised by the Board of Health. We need more than their anecdotal evidence cited in their letter to the Planning Board. And we certainly need better data than the level of hysteria that was raised by the malfeasance ad from the October 18th Action Unlimited, if you can see, remember that ad. As a measure of credibility of this advertisement, remember that malfeasance is a specific legal term that for a premeditated crime by a public official. And that's quite a charge for someone who's not the courage of his or her convictions to sign their ad, which, by the way, was also a last-minute interjection into an 18-month rezoning discussion. It's regrettable that the Board of Health raised the issue at the 11th hour before town meeting, an act which preempted a calm analysis of the issue. The Westfitch Study, officially entitled A Quantitative Assessment of Potential Health Risks Due to the Operation of the Proposed Newport Materials Asphalt Plant, Westford, Massachusetts, which I will call the Westfitch Study, was accepted by the Massachusetts Supreme Court as their basis for granting Westford plant an operating permit, but was dismissed out of hand by the Board of Health as only one study and a study that relied on modeling of similar plants. Now, scientific rigor demands that an experiment be repeatable. We therefore call for a second study to validate or dismiss the findings of the Westford study. We also call for a study of the Oak Street plant neighborhood to determine its health and safety. These studies would eliminate the modeling objections as they would be conducted at the actual plants. There are the three large fiscal considerations with this undertaking. There's the moderate cost of the actual study, and I'll get to those estimates in a moment. The physical hits to the town and the residents in terms of property values when an official body of the town determines that certain neighborhoods are hazardous. And the fiscal exposure to the town of lawsuits emanating for residents in low-income housing near the Oak Street plant, claiming that the town is culpable in their deteriorating health by subsidizing housing in a hazardous area. I was given a ballpark figure of $50,000 for such studies by two different Boston-based environmental firms who routinely do these studies for industry. Since then, Assistant Town Manager Mike McCall has secured a copy of the Westford report and studies conducted by Newport Materials and aggregate studies of their facilities. Mr. McCall has also filed Freedom of Information Act requests with the state and federal authorities for any and all environmental studies that are conducted in these two neighborhoods. These studies can help us better define the scope and methods of our study. Since neither the state nor the federal authorities have responded to Mr. McCall's FOIA request, we suspect that comprehensive monitoring in both areas has been neglected for quite some time, making an independent study by Chelmsford a necessity. Thank you, Mr. McCall, for your help. I wish the state and federal people were as efficient as you. Now, $50,000 may seem like an exorbitant sum, but let's put that into perspective by noting that the town of Chelmsford was willing to award two separate $75,000 grants to jumpstart restaurants in the 129 area, and will spend $80,000 for pickleball courts at Varney Park. Some may object, claiming that the town can't afford air quality studies with the financial burdens of the COVID crisis is placed upon the town. But the COVID virus is all the more reason we need these studies. COVID strikes the lungs, often with fatal consequences. We say more than ever, the town needs to ensure air quality for its citizens. Spending $50,000 to preserve property values, insulate from lawsuits, and ensure people's health is money well spent. The town, through its Board of Health, has opened this can of worms. It's only fair that the town fix the problem. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jerry.
Mr. Chairman, any questions?
I don't. Does anybody have any questions?
What is the actual practical step of doing this? Like, what is the process by which we would commission such a study?
Well, if there's anything else, you'd have to go out to bid. You'd have to get some parameters on that. I think it's way above my pay grade.
I was thinking Paul might know.
I think exactly. If it's more than $10,000, we're gonna have to get 3 quotes for that type of work. So we would have to, competitively procure it.
Would that have to be voted by town meeting?
Well, the appropriation would have to be approved by town meeting.
So, but that's what Jerry, what you're talking about, right? This is your citizens petition for one article for the 50,000. Correct?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, so this would go to town meeting on June 22nd, and if voted, it would allow up to 50,000, and that would have to go out to bid, and we'd have to get bids for the process, for the report. And Paul, this is on the, this is a warrant article now?
Yes, it's towards the front of the agenda. It's Article 10 or somewhere around there.
Right. Yeah, I think I saw it. Okay. All right. So thank you, Jerry.
Okay, and I hope you
Anybody
folks
else
will
have a
recommend
question?
that to town. I hope you'll recommend that to town meeting. And nice job being the ringmaster of this technology. I think everybody on the committee should get 3 graduate credits from Lowell's computer program for this. Nice job.
Thanks, Jerry.
Well, I don't see any questions in the chat box. So with that, we're going to move it along. Next up, we have, and thank you, Jerry.
Thank
And
you.
we'll see you soon. Stay safe. We'll move on to Attorney Doug Hauser with the Umass Lowell West Campus Demolition and Redevelopment. And Doug, oh, you're on. You're unmuted.
I think I'm unmuted. I hope I am.
Yep.
Okay,
Is there, Doug, is there anyone else with you related to this project whose video we should turn on for this segment?
yes, there are at least 3 or 4 people minimally. One is our consultant, Alan Grinnell, and at least two of the owners, principals of the owner entity are on, Mr. Chen and Alice Siu. And I'm not sure if anybody else from Hanover is on with us or not. But those would be the 2 owner representatives. That's Alice, that I believe right there that appeared. And I hope Chen can join us as well. But we anticipate Mr. Grinnell providing most of the details for tonight's presentation. And just so you are aware, we provided a notice to, and I want to thank Helen Balzioli, and I probably just mispronounced her name, but I'd like to thank her for her assistance. We were trying to get a notice out. There were I think it's over 200 names that would have gotten actual notices. And Helen, as a member of the trustees of the Condominium Association that abuts this, told me on Friday that she would provide notice to the trustees, and that would be more than sufficient because she's been monitoring this for quite some time. So I want to thank her for assisting us in that effort. With respect to the single-family homeowners that are on the east side of the project, of the land below, we sent out UPS letters to each of them, which they received probably today, but it went out on Friday. There were about 8 or 9 homeowners total that needed to get that type of a notice. And again, this is an informal notice, an informal discussion. It's just to make them aware that this information is being presented.
Would it be appropriate to show the video of the people who have come in response to your notice, or would you prefer not to do that at this time?
Well, I think it might be helpful if we could let Mr. Grinnell do the presentation
Okay,
that he's prepared for you and to discuss it and give an overall view, and then open it up to questions either by the chat board or by the chair, as questions may come up about demolition only, because that's what we're here to discuss this evening. So
thank you.
if that's okay with the board, I'm going to turn it over to Alan Grinnell, who's our consultant, and allow Alan to go forward. Alan, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, abutters, town residents, and other members of the public who may be listening in. As Doug has stated, I've been retained as the environmental consultant and construction manager for the demolition, abatement, and cleanup of the former Richardson Hall, which is part of the Umass Lowell West campus, which is currently owned by 255 Princeton Realty Holdings. So the purpose in getting together tonight was really to provide an overview of what that process for cleaning up this building involves, and more importantly, to answer questions raised by any of the stakeholders, adjacent residents, relative to how that process is going to occur, what, if any, safety risks there may be, and hopefully I can bring to light what that process is going to involve and eliminate or at least alleviate some concerns that the residents may have. Just a little bit of background for those that may not be aware. We're actually talking about the former UMass Lowell West campus located at 255 Princeton Street, which has been vacant for quite some time. And I believe, if I have the dates right, back on April 30th, the Richardson Hall building suffered a roof collapse, which created an imminent safety hazard. And by Thursday afternoon, an order to demolish was issued by the town, and subsequently the building was demolished to the extent that it would not pose a safety hazard, because sites like these are very inviting to a lot of people who want to explore old buildings, and I've seen situations like this in the past where they can become very problematic and very dangerous. So by May 1st, the site was demolished, and right now, currently, the remains of that building is sitting in a pile, covered with tarps and sheeting, awaiting final demolition and disposal of the property. So I'm going to bring up if I can screen share. I'm not sure if I was given the ability to do that. Host.
Let me see if I can.
Yeah, if you could do that, that would be great. So while
I just made you. I just made you a co-host, so now you should have the ability to share your screen.
Okay, great. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the former Richardson Hall, and what it looked like prior to demolition. And this is what it actually looks like now. It's fenced off, it covered with poly sheeting. As many of you are aware, one of the big concerns with this is older buildings have asbestos-containing materials in them, and that's part of the reason for the concern here. Is when this was demolished, there was a fairly substantial amount of asbestos-containing building materials that were installed in this property when it was built. So there is a process, regulatory process that has to be followed for its disposition, cleanup, and disposal. And I will get to some of that. Also, I'm going to bring up a site layout here just to give people an idea of where this building is on the campus. So you can see it's the backmost building that abuts the condominiums here on St. Andrews Way. So these are the closest residential structures, and this here is where the building was demolished. So let's back up here. Okay. So just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I've been involved in asbestos related issues for 30 plus years. I've done numerous projects like these. I've also was the former training director for the Institute for Environmental Education. So I teach all of the environmental certification courses as it relates to asbestos. I'm a Massachusetts licensed asbestos project designer, management planner, inspector, monitor. A couple of notable projects: the former Danvers State Hospital, which had 30 plus buildings larger than this. Basically, we did the same thing, surveyed them, inspected them, wrote the plans for their demolition, abatement, and disposal. I was also involved in the Salem Harbor Power Plant. Some of you may recall back in 2007, there was a large explosion resulting in the largest asbestos cleanup in the state's history, and I was responsible for overseeing that. So this project is pretty straightforward. It does require a process, and part of that process is when you have an abatement action that cannot be accomplished through traditional methods. The Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection requires a non-traditional work plan be developed. And because this building was partially demolished, there's no way to separate the asbestos-containing building materials from the demolition debris. So therefore, it has to be bulk loaded out using heavy equipment. There's also remnants of the building that are still intact from the first floor down to the basement. So there's additional demolition work that needs to be undertaken. So in order to get rid of the building, the process dictates that a non-traditional work plan be developed by an asbestos project designer, that's me. And what I'm going to go through with you right now is how the elements of that plan, and kind of give you just an overview of how this project is going to go forward. And then we can talk about potential risks, some of the safety concerns, what we're going to do to mitigate those risks, time frame, how long the project's going to take, hours of operation. There's going to be heavy equipment up there, and it is adjacent to a residential neighborhood, so I do want to address those concerns. And then at the end, we'll open it up to questions from any of the abutters. I put my business card up there as a background so that you can see my email's there, my phone number's there. I would ask that after this presentation is over, if you do have questions, please put them in writing to me, as I won't be responding to any questions over the phone till we actually get a request in writing. And that's just to maintain or track the information response and those people that are actually requesting. We want to make sure that we get you the answers properly. Let's see. How do I do this. Okay. Next page. You have to forgive me. I'm there we go. Still learning Zoom. My kids are better than I. All right. So the non-traditional work plan was prepared in accordance with 310 CMR 7.15, which are the section of the Massachusetts DEP regulations which oversees asbestos related projects. So as part of the plan, what we seek to do is just kind of review the work practices and procedures that are going to be used specifically for this project. It talks about how we're going to set up the work area, how the material is going to be removed and disposed of, what type of engineering controls and safety measures are going to be in place, who actually does the work. And then there's also a monitoring and an oversight piece, which ALG will be performing. So at any point in time when this work is going on, it will be monitored by a licensed asbestos abatement project monitor. Continual air sampling that will be done as well. And I'll get into that a little bit more. Then there's a clearance process to confirm that the work has been done in accordance with the plan. There is a process for confirming completion and clearing the site pursuant to the requirements of the regulations in the plan. So I'll just go through the various sections and give you an idea. As far as the project timeline, as of today, we pretty much identified who the contractor is going to be. I'm not going to release that information tonight because we haven't made the formal award to the contractor. Suffice it to say that they are very experienced. They've done numerous types of these projects. They probably have 30 to 40 years of experience in Massachusetts doing similar types of projects. With that being said, our goal is to finalize the contracts and get this work started by Monday of next week. The state of Massachusetts does not want this building to sit there covered with plastic sheeting any longer than necessary. So our goal and intent is to get this project started by Monday of next week. Relative to the timeline, total project duration, we're looking at 3 to 4 weeks. The first few days is going to be just very quiet, demarcating the work area, setting up additional fencing, barricades, all of the things that we need to do to execute the work. So there's going to be 3 or 4 days of just work area setup. Part of that setup includes expanding the fenced area that some of you may have seen around the building itself. That's going to be made a little bit larger than what you see right now. We'll also have a small site trailer up there. And so that'll take a few days. As far as the actual use of heavy equipment, we anticipate active use of an excavator, trucks coming and going, hauling out material. That process should take about 10 days if everything goes well. It could be longer. Trucking has been an issue with the COVID crisis. So as long as we get the number of trucks that we need to get the material out of there in a timely fashion, it should take no more than, as I said, 10 days. The final week of the process is going to be devoted to the clearance process, which involves visual inspections. It also The state DEP is given the opportunity to come out and inspect as well. We cannot clear the site without their blessing. There will be air sampling that's done, there's visual inspections that are done, and then there are soil samples that are done to confirm site completion. So all total, that process is going to take anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks. Okay. What's down here? As far as the removal, the general gist of this is the entire building is considered contaminated material. There's no effective way to separate the asbestos-containing building materials and debris from those materials that typically would be sent to a recycling center, like brick or concrete or steel. All of those things in a traditional demolition would be recycled as required. Unfortunately, in this situation, we don't have that luxury. So the entire building is going to be disposed of as asbestos-containing material. With that being said, during the actual work, there's part of the setup requires that we have in place these giant misters. If any of you have been skiing, you know they make snow with those giant snow guns. Well, we're going to be using 3 of those giant snow guns to actually spray mist over the site while we're removing the material and placing it into lined dumpsters or trucks. I believe they're 50 or 60 yard dump trailers that are lined with plastic sheeting. And then the excavator will then grapple the material and load it into that dumpster. In addition to the misters, while they're misting, there's also will be somebody on a fire hose doing spot wetting as necessary. The federal requirement is whenever you do asbestos abatement, you have no visible emissions. So that's the purpose of the misters, is that we don't have visible emissions, and obviously we don't want anything airborne leaving that general work area and migrating beyond the confines of the work area. To support that, all 4 sides of the work, so 4 points on the compass, there'll be an air monitoring station that is set up on each side of the work zone. Air samples will be running constantly while the work is in progress. There'll be a set in the morning, a set in the afternoon, and those air monitoring results we will make available to people. Again, you need to have a written request. In my experience, and I've done, as I said, I've done numerous projects like these. The air acts as its own engineering control. I've not experienced any air sample that have been above regulatory limits with asbestos. I don't anticipate that we're going to have any issues with the migration of airborne asbestos fibers to adjacent areas or adjacent properties. But again, we want to be as transparent as possible. Those air samples also get sent to Massachusetts DEP at the end of each day. If there was a problem, work would stop. We'd find out what the problem is. We'd take steps to correct it before moving on. So that is a very regulated process. It is something that's carved in stone and is set forth by the regulation. So again, we're going to be bulk loading the material into large dump trailers. These trucks come into the site, and before they leave, they're actually lined up on a truck wash. And the truck wash is where the vehicle will be washed down so that there's no debris on the tires or sides of the trailer or truck itself. So it'll be completely clean as it leaves the site. Okay, it's the responsibility of the project monitor to ensure that every vehicle that leaves the site or every piece of equipment that either comes in or goes out has been inspected, decontaminated, cleaned before it leaves. All of the waste from this project, just to assure everybody it's not going into your backyard or next door or some other place on the site, is being shipped to a landfill out in Ohio. It's basically the only place it's will accept it. There's very few asbestos landfills that are operating that will take this type of debris. So every load of waste is actually being shipped all the way to Ohio. We estimate that there's approximately 2,000 plus tons of material that will be removed from the site and will be taken off. And that's all documented as well. Every load of waste has a waste shipment record. So it's a process, but it's all very documented. Okay. Part of our plan, one of the things that did not happen is that the building was not demolished in its entirety. So there's a portion of the building that still exists. So it's from the first floor down into the basement. There's a large quantity of asbestos materials in the basement. So when we get to the first floor, if we can clean off the deck of the first floor without compromising the integrity of that first floor, we're not even sure. The integrity may already be compromised. But the state of Massachusetts has asked us if we could abate the basement traditionally with a traditional containment versus having to bulk load it out. We don't know if we can. We're going to make that assessment when we get there. It may not be structurally sound. It might be too dangerous to put people in there. So there's some issues that we need to take into account before that. So there will be a pause while we do the abatement. Once we get down to that first floor level, we'll see how we want to proceed, and then we'll go from there. Site cleaning will be done on a daily basis, which includes the truck wash. There's a personnel decontamination unit and any other equipment. At the end of each day, that's all clean. So visual confirmation is performed by the asbestos project monitor. So that's general site cleaning. Some of the engineering controls, just to go over the engineering controls. As I mentioned earlier, the number one engineering control in any asbestos project is water. Making sure that the material is wet. If it's wet, it can't stay airborne, it doesn't travel. So our entire goal here is to make sure that the material is wet, stays wet, and if for any reason we encounter materials that have dried out or this or that, we stop work till they're wet. Every load of waste that leaves site has to be adequately wet. So water, that's the number one engineering control, at least for this particular project. That will be in place. Now, with the wetting, there will also be wastewater that is collected in the truck wash. That is all collected, and then it is reused. It is either put into the loads of waste that are leaving, or it's sprayed back onto the pile. The bigger takeaway is that there is no wastewater discharge of asbestos contaminated water anywhere on the site. So it's all collected. If there were wastewater that could not be discharged, regulations require that it goes through a 5-micron filter before being discharged, but we're not going to, there's not going to be, and that's part of the plan, any wastewater discharged on the site. Equipment decontamination. Probably a good idea to talk about who's going to be doing the work. So as I mentioned, the company that we've chosen has extensive experience in these types of projects. All of the personnel on site will be licensed asbestos abatement personnel overseen by an asbestos abatement contractor. And they have some pretty strict requirements that they have to follow, which our licensed project monitor and myself will be overseeing. They need to have certain levels of training. They need to, wear disposable clothing. So some of the things that if you peek over the property line and you're looking at what's going on, you're going to see guys in the fluffy white suits with respirators, and that's the personal protective equipment they wear. is to ensure that they don't take asbestos fibers and or debris off-site with them. That's the purpose of disposable clothing. Obviously the respirators, so they're not breathing anything. But people tend to get a little bit nervous when they see people in that type of personal protective gear. But that is, specifically to protect them, and they're not allowed to leave the confines of the work area in any of that gear. They actually have to go through a decontamination process before they actually leave the work area. Okay. They are also monitored. We collect air samples to make sure that they're in the proper PPE. So there's a strict monitoring protocol that's required by OSHA, so that we can ensure that they're being protected properly. I talked earlier about the perimeter air monitoring. This is a fairly lengthy section. It can get somewhat technical, but suffice it to say, again, there'll be continual air monitoring done on a daily basis. Results are sent to the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. We're going to keep a book on site with the results each day. If somebody would like to find out what those are, my email is up on the business card there. Simply shoot us an email and we'd be more than happy to let you know what the current air monitoring is and whether or not there's any issues. Okay. And finally, the last part of this process is the final cleaning and visual clearance. And we're going to end up taking probably, a certain amount of, once the building is gone, we're also actually going to be removing soil. So to make sure that there's no contaminated soil left behind. So a minimum of 2 inches, it usually works out to, 2 to 4 inches of soil will also be collected and disposed of as part of the project. Once the clearance process has been complete, we are required to notify DEP, give them the opportunity to come out and do their own inspection. I believe there was a question brought up earlier, possibly by one of the selectmen, like, how does this all work with DEP? DEP is the one that has the authority over this work site. So they're welcome anytime. They can show up anytime. This plan, if there's any changes to the plan, it has to be amended and approved by DEP. So it's a very regulated process. And they have the overall say in all of this. So they've given us the preliminary approval of the plan, short of naming the contractor. I spoke to them earlier today. I don't see any changes in the plan that I've put before you, short of just defining who that contractor is. There is one slide that I do want to show you right here that gives you an idea of the site layout. So it's going to be expanded from this little circle to this layout here. So this red line, we're going to be installing additional fencing. Okay, so this will be hard fenced all the way around the site. This is where the truck wash will be located. The personnel decontamination unit. The little stars show the locations of the air monitoring station. There'll be a administration, site trailer over in this area. Water is being used from a fire hydrant currently on the site, but this gives you an idea of the general site layout. Again, it's a fairly straightforward project, but I do greatly understand the concerns of those. When you mention the word asbestos, it's not something that a lot of people have had experience with. For a lot of people, they see the commercials on TV, all these class action suits. TVs in your home. All these class action suits. So I can understand the anxiety and concern that this poses, but I do want to assure all parties, this is a very straightforward project. The engineering controls, processes, and procedures are quite regulated, and we don't anticipate any issues going forward. But that's what my firm is here for. We're there to make sure that there are no issues. Our primary responsibility is to protect the health and welfare of all parties, first and foremost, to make sure that the project is done in a compliant manner, and to eliminate any safety concerns and liability as a result thereof. So I'm going to stop the screen share here. And at this point, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions relative to the project.
Alan, thank you very, very much for that detailed presentation. There were one or two questions that had come up in the chat box. I believe you addressed them. One of them was about what happens with contaminated water runoff, and you specifically addressed that in section 6.2 of your presentation, and I thank you for that. And then there was a question about air monitoring approaches, and you went into great detail about that as well. So the other questions that have been coming up are what hours of the day will demolition activities be taking place?
Good question. I'm sorry I didn't mention that. Knowing that we do have residences next door, it's there's no way to eliminate the noise. There's going to be some noise. So people need to understand that. But what we did is typically the construction day starts at 7 a.m. We said, no, we're gonna try to make that a little later. So we need to be able to work for a minimum of 8 hours. So we're gonna start at 8 o'clock, and then we'd like to be finished before 5. So the hours would be between 8 and 5, most likely 8 to 4:30, and around the 4 o'clock, 4:30 time, we're really just cleaning up.
Will that include weekends?
At this point, we do not anticipate weekends. It's based for a Monday through Friday work schedule.
Thanks. There was another question that was also coming up about concerns about rodent remediation prior to demolition and what's being done about that. I don't know if you can address that or if you need me to address that.
No, I believe that the owners have already contacted pest control, and baits have already been put out in regards to that. That's already been done.
That's my understanding. I think we coordinated that through the owners with Mr. Shanahan and the Board of Health as well. So I believe we've been trying to be as cooperative and communicative with the town as much as possible. And we feel very comfortable that we've hired a highly regarded professional who's going to make sure this job is done correctly the first time and in a prompt, fair way. Unless there are other questions,
Doug, I'd like to ask a question, Mr. Hosler.
Yes, sir.
This is George. It's a great presentation. You've got a very complex and extensive and expensive undertaking you're taking on right now. I'm just curious, with all the money you've expended so far, you must have a pretty warm and fuzzy feeling that that whatever you're going to propose to the town is going to be accepted or approved, or however you want to call it. I'm just curious, have you brought this you haven't brought this formally or maybe informally in front of any of the people in town regarding what you're trying to do?
No, we're dealing with the demolition only. That was the purpose of tonight's meeting.
I understand that, but you're a pretty smart guy. You probably got maybe $3.5 million in coming into this. You probably got another $2 or $3 million probably in the remediation or whatever here. I'm guessing. That was I'm not obviously Mr. Grinnell would know, but I'm just asking. I just think it's just a question that I think anybody would ask. You're spending all this money. I would think you feel pretty good that you have the plan that we would all enjoy having in town. Yes.
we'll go through the normal processes through the appropriate boards and make a presentation about that at the appropriate time. Obviously, the owners are investing a lot of money into this process.
Right.
My own views, some of this should have been done decades ago, but it is what it is. So we'll be going forward as we can. We're trying to be very cautious about how money is being spent by the owners. And but most importantly of all, I think you can clearly get the message. Safety has been the number one issue, and transparency. And that's all we're about to deal with tonight is the demolition, and that we're going forward to get that resolved first. We'll anticipate going forward with something more formal regarding what may or may not be taking place in the future on the site. That's still to be determined.
Okay, thank you very much. It was a very impressive presentation, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
That's Mr. Grinnell. Thanks for him.
And good luck.
Thank you. You want to hear the-
Any other questions?
Yeah.
We got one more question, Doug.
No, I'm waiting to hear.
I've got one. So for Mr. Grinnell, it's just in terms of theory and looking at you know, the overview of projects like this, can this sort of remediation be avoided with similar buildings by maintaining them better, by reviewing them for demolition and recycling sooner than before they collapse? How did we get to the point where we are wasting this much material due to asbestos contamination?
Well, I'm gonna answer this delicately. Okay. All right. 'Cause I have my own opinions on this. The answer is we obviously want to try to avoid these types of remediations at any cost, because they become very costly for the owner. They also create enhanced safety risks, which require, you know, more planning, more costs, more work to make sure that they're done properly. The state would prefer us to abate these types of buildings using traditional method where everything's contained inside the structure, so that we reduce the risk of anything becoming airborne. Now, I understand that about 3 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden this roof collapsed. And by sometime that afternoon, an order to demolish was issued. I'll give you a little bit of backstory that maybe some of the selectmen don't know or the building department doesn't know. The owners actually were in the process of determining what asbestos containing building materials were in the building, and we're working with a structural engineer to see if that building could be abated safely. Now, I'm just going to throw out my opinion because you asked the question, and this is in no way meant to disparage anybody at the town level, because this overall, what was done in the interest of safety, okay, first and foremost. However, the decision was made so quickly that it's my opinion that in lieu of demolishing the building so quickly, a security guard, for the amount of money that we're spending, you could have had full-time security with lights up there, additional fencing, till a more reasoned or appropriate response could have been undertaken that would have mitigated some of the cost and where we're at right now. It's possible that certain aspects of the building could have been abated differently. The building owners could have had more time to seek out a response and a solution, even though parts of the building had collapsed, because, you know, we had a structural engineer in there. Give you an example. We could have pushed over maybe a portion of the building, put a trenching and shoring, not a trenching, but a shoring plan in place for those areas that may have been compromised, and we could have reduced the cost of this. So I think there was a rush to judgment a little bit, and I understand why. And again, I'm not trying to disparage anybody in what happened, but you asked how we got here. So what I would say in the future, if you have situations like this, prior to actually demolishing the building or getting to this point, it might be prudent to, reach out to somebody like myself or other consultants before you take that step. Because I will say that, it was like a giant sledgehammer to solve the problem, and unfortunately has created a lot of additional cost and concern, that some of which could have been.
Alan, if I may, as the building commissioner, if I may, okay? There were people going up there, inspecting that property, who live in that area on a daily basis, walking their dogs. Portions of that building collapsed. There was an imminent danger, okay? Someone would have heard something fall, walking their dog, went to investigate, potentially died. That was my hearing.
Correct. And I'm not disputing that, but at the same time, you could have had 24-hour monitoring with security guards stationed there. You could have had 4 of them for the cost that it's taking to do this, just to, another day or two to get the right solution. That's all I'm saying. And again, I'm not trying to say it's something in the future. We look back at these events and we try to figure out how to do things.
Alan,
But anyway, that's
so you're talking about a day or two to get a solution. And I think, if I can just build off of Emily's question, there was a demolition order in place on February 12th. What happened between February 12th and April 30th when the building started to collapse? So, I mean, you've given a great presentation about how we're handling and making this safe now that the building is down. But I think the safety issue existed probably before you were brought into this.
Yeah, I can't speak to that.
So
let me try to explain. The owners when the demolition or the February 12th, I think it was, letter was issued, the owners immediately arranged for an environmental firm and engineers to go in to assess the buildings. And it was a number of weeks of assessment being done by those environmental engineers, so that we would hopefully not get to the position where we are today on Richardson Hall. And we were not informed that there was anything likely like this to occur, other than we were doing the environmental background work that we needed to do. We were coordinating with Mr. Shanahan. We did have security people out there. We did have fencing out there. I can only tell you is that the owner did, I think, everything humanly possible at that point, remembering they are not licensed environmental engineers, but they reacted timely, responsively, and cooperatively with the town. And, I think what the message I'm getting tonight listening to this is, we've all learned something here that's important. Hopefully we'll never encounter this problem again, number one. But number two, before that type of activity has to be done, perhaps there'll be another assessment about whether it could be fenced, covered, etc., in a different way without having those costs. But we're not looking backwards, we're looking forward. And I think this is going the right spot. I hope everybody's satisfied with that.
So, I mean, what I was asking was I was not casting aspersions on the current owners. I was looking at the situation where you had empty buildings for decades that were owned by the University of Massachusetts, that the state had, jurisdiction over. And what I want to know is that when you have a situation where you have such a landowner, such a landlord, are there ways to maintain and ensure that buildings don't come to this state of disrepair where they can be safely dismantled and recycled and taken down long before there is any risk of a dog walker or a teenager climbing around up there? I am asking in terms of all the other old buildings around that are not maintained.
I think that's an answer that can be probably directed to the building inspector. And, you know, he can identify what buildings are, quote, empty or not, and what is in need of additional work. But I don't think that's relevant to tonight's presentation. Respectfully, I think just these buildings and this site, I can't, pointing the finger at the state for being so unresponsive is, or irresponsible, isn't going to help us.
Doug, my attorney Hausler, my question is, going forward, and this is really to Professor Grinnell, who clearly has the expertise here, in terms of looking at this as a board from a town government perspective, when you have landlords who are absentee, who aren't paying attention, who aren't doing anything, who aren't maintaining, is this an avoidable situation? Can you look at this situation and say, we're going to get a repeat if this owner doesn't step up and take care of the property? That is what I want to know. I want to know whether or not this is a known outcome of neglecting buildings to this point.
I'll speak to that. Yes, it is. The very simple answer is it's going to happen again. I've seen it happen to numerous buildings owned by different people. Basically, it comes down to money. Who's going to maintain it? Maybe there is nobody to maintain it. Maybe there's no money to maintain it, and there's no regulatory requirement to force people to do anything with their property unless it becomes an imminent safety hazard, and then you have the ability to do it. So it's probably not the answer that you want to hear, but yes, it's going to happen again. But it all comes down to money. You know, who's going to pay the money to maintain an old building or to remove the asbestos materials until it's either sold or you know, there's some type of disposition with it? The answer is, you know, maybe nobody.
Thank you, Alan. That's a good answer from Chief Ryan, that UMass Chancellor Marty Meehan had asked the state for funding to remove them, and apparently that never got funded. But it wasn't as if it was. There was some effort made by the state, obviously not enough, and they didn't devote the funds. But that's where we are. There is a question, Alan, that we need to follow up with, which is, what is the timeline for getting the other buildings completed?
We are revisiting the environmental surveys for those buildings. I will be putting out a bid package within the next number of weeks. The overall time, I'm not gonna box myself into anything, but I would say within 6 months, those buildings will be completely gone.
Okay. And the other.
And what about
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say the other question about the historic. I think you were probably going to ask that.
Well, I believe Sean, the building inspector's letter eliminates the need to deal with the historic elements of this. The Historic Commission shouldn't have any concerns over this at this point because the demolition order supersedes it. So I think that's the answer to that question. The other point I wanted to bring up here, and I'm trying to find it here. The issue, and the fire chief is correct. The property has been very much marked as a no entry property. No trespassing signs have been put up, fencing had been put up. I recognize that many people have utilized that site for walking their dogs or just going on stroll. I would ask that everybody in the general public, and especially people in that area, for the time being, please stay off that property for safety reasons. It's incredibly important that this get done timely without risk to anybody. And I'm sure that we can get this job done correctly with the right approaches, but we need cooperation from people not to be walking on the property. And that has happened several times when I've been up there to check on things, and I see people walking through. They really, it's already posted as no trespassing. We're begging people to please stay off the property. Mr. Chairman,
Okay. Is there any more questions?
I don't have a question. I just wonder if we could have a copy of that report that was presented to include as supporting documents with our minutes and packet.
Yeah, I can't give you a copy of that right now, but at a future date, once I have final approvals and once the owners have given me permission, I'll be more than happy to make that available.
Okay, thank you.
Attorney Hausler, there were, I think, a couple questions that came in when we were wrapping up prior to this the first time. I don't know, did you address the one that the rodent remediation, and there was another one about high winds?
No, we did not deal with the high winds. Thank you for that. We did deal with the rodent issue,
Yeah.
but the high wind issue, Alan, the question came in from somebody that what happens when you have an extremely windy day?
Part of the plan, I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't address that. We have an anemometer set up measuring wind speed. And anytime that have a single gust of 15 or a steady over 10, we stop work.
Okay. And to my knowledge, based on the chat board, I didn't see any other questions coming in from anybody from outside of the people that are presently unmuted. So, Mr. Chairman, unless you have any other questions, we're just going to go forward and try to get this done as quickly as we can.
Okay, I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Fellow board members, any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you, Attorney Hausler and guests. That was great. Thank you. All right, with that, we'll move on to John Souza, who's our finance director, to talk about short-term note federal emergency management. John, I'll turn it over to you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and guests. I thank you. I provided the board on May 18th with an email just describing the background and the reasons for doing this short-term borrowing. It relates to a project where the town served as a pass-through entity to allow federal funding to be received for the Merrimack River Stabilization Project near Williamsburg. And although the project is pretty much completed, we're awaiting a final inspection from MEMA, the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency. So currently the account is in a deficit, so it's highly unlikely that we'll receive the final payment by June 30th. So what we needed to do was issue a short-term note, a 30-day note through the State House Notes program. It's a low-cost option for towns. We had a successful note auction last on May 27th, and we awarded the bid to Unibank with a interest rate of 1.2%. The note will be, as I said, it will be a 30-day note, so this will just be a short-term note. And I appreciate everyone's support. And because this is a short-term note and not a long-term borrowing, won't be asking the board to, take a formal vote. Usually we have a lengthy motion that we ask you to review and that's been prepared by bond counsel, but that's not necessary in this case. So I appreciate everyone's support on it. And once you sign, the documents will be on their way. I believe as of today, we had 3 signatures, so that's great. We have a majority of the board that approved that, and I appreciate your support.
Thank you, John. John, do you need all 5 or you just need 3?
No, just a majority of 3, they said was necessary for this. So
Okay.
we're good on the signatures.
Yeah, I don't know who didn't sign, but if they want to sign it, and you need it driven around to get the signatures, I'd be happy to get it, but whatever you want.
Yeah, I was willing to. We're good because we have 3 as of today, and I I did have to FedEx it out just late in the day just to get it back to Boston on time, but I appreciate everybody's support on that.
All right. Thank you, John. Good job.
Thank you.
So with that, we move on to the Business Development Director, Lisa Maroney, who is going to give us an update on, I guess, 3 different topics here. Taking Lisa up. She is. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. So do I need to share my screen, or would you like me to just talk to my notes? I'm not sure how you'd like me to do this.
Well, I normally I'd say fine. I got bumped out in the middle of Doug's presentation and came back in, and I lost my host ability, so I can't assign you co-host.
Okay, no worries. So I know that the agenda has provided web links to my presentations for the general public to view anyways, and I can just speak to my notes here. It's kind of a...
Oh, Lisa, I could probably do that if you want. I could open the presentation if you give me a second, if you really want people to see it, and then I can share my screen.
Chelmsford Telemedia just said Lisa should be able to share if that's what she wants.
Yeah. So I'm attempting this.
There you go.
Okay. So I'd like to share the great news that Chelmsford has been chosen to receive the Attorney General Small Business Relief Partnership Grant in regard to COVID-19. There were only 12 communities awarded. This is a statewide grant, so there were 4 planning commissions and 12 communities. So we were very fortunate to receive this fund. I did ask for the maximum award of $50,000. We received $35,000. And so soon we'll be putting out a program and a link application. I have put a draft of the program. It's not as much money as we would like, so it's a little bit keeping it basic because the goal is to get this money out to the small businesses as soon as we receive it. We don't have it in our office yet, but as soon as it arrives, we will be ready to turn it around and get it right back out. We are offering this grant money to support small businesses with the reopening and also marketing funds and helping to support them to regain some economic stability as they try to. So you'll see here that. And sharing this good news with everyone. I'm available to talk in more detail about it, but you expect to see an announcement that includes a web link, like a web portal, where applicants can go in, click on the link. It's a very brief application. Businesses will need to have a valid business certificate on file with the town clerk to qualify. And in order to move this money very quickly back out to the business community, we are keeping it streamlined with awarding $1,000 to each applicant until funds run out for qualified applicants. So $35,000, there'll be 5 applicants. It'll be a open rolling first come first serve type of process and to keep moving as quickly as possible. So any questions about that? That's kind of my high level review of it. No? Okay, so I'm going to move on. I'd like to share an update regarding the business amenity incentive grant. So bear with me a moment while I switch my screen here. I'm trying to click around here. How do you move this out of the way so I can click on my, not that, not yet. Okay. Can everybody see this? I think so. Okay. So, as you know, we've been working very hard at attracting business amenities to Route 129 as a way to create business attraction and fill up empty space. And with the arrival of COVID-19, all of the proposed projects to date basically have rescinded. We've been working with the applicants. None of them are able to move forward and secure a signed lease. When we last presented this information to you, we were about 90% through the process, and many are moving forward. Since then, though, none of them have been able to finalize the process with the signed lease. So what we're planning to do here, this is the timeline. As you can see, preliminary awards were announced on the 19th. Construction shutdown happened, the pandemic, and a lot of these projects are unable to move forward. So just giving you a brief update here, we do still have $200,000 available as a way to provide technical assistance and recruitment and a business attraction for 129. What we'd like to do is work on still trying to entice a major restaurant to come into 129. We have been in discussions, and we're looking to provide them an incentive as a way to keep this program on point and the mission in attracting businesses. So there is an offer out. We are waiting to hear back from the major restaurant and the tenant. Conversations have included, the town manager, Evan, myself. We've been working at this for a while, so we should know more information by the end of next week. We also have a pending contract with Camoin. If you recall, they were hired, the town was offered a site readiness grant slightly before my arrival, and we had hired, through Mass Development, we had hired Camoin. They're very familiar with 129, existing conditions, future direction, very familiar with the town of Chelmsford. So we are interested to bring them back as an economic development firm to assist us in completing the recommendations offered from that 9-month study of how to turn around this business park and work towards, full occupation of all the available business space. So that is our proposed approach in utilizing the 200,000. When we learn more information, we'll be drafting a new scope of services back to the state office. This funding comes from the Executive Office of Workforce and Labor Development. So we'll be reworking that, and that's kind of where we're at with the business amenity grant. I've asked the state for several extensions of time to help us rework this program. Those haven't been approved, so the funding still does expire on June 30th. So this is where we're at currently with this funding.
At least you said that those extensions haven't been approved or have?
Have not.
So they both expire. Okay.
Yes, and so I suspect that because of COVID-19, if we don't spend this money for the original purpose on Route 129, it'll probably be repurposed for COVID-19 funding. So we're really trying to make a very strong concerted effort to keep this money on 129, as we were just, as you know, making some great progress out there.
So Lisa, in order to pursue your best options, are you saying you have to resubmit it and get approval again for that scope?
So I think the scope would just be a slight change. We're still focused on 129. We're still trying to direct the funding there towards a specific purpose. But the current scope is to procure and purchase kitchen equipment or kitchen fit out for a business amenity, and that's just not going to work.
And so Camoin would be able to help you with the implementation of their recommendations from their study, would they also potentially be able to help look at maybe what needs to be adjusted in their recommendations given the current climate, if anything?
Yes, is the answer. So certainly, if we move in that direction, we will have that opportunity to outline a proposal prior to, I would have to submit for the scope of services, that would have to be outlined of how this funding would be utilized. So that will be defined, but we've got about 30 days to figure this out and award the funding to an economic development firm, which we've had conversations with them. They, I trust their work. I know that we've talked about, because of this quick timeline, there's room for adjustments. The 8 recommendations, I can provide them if you're interested. I'm sorry I don't have them handy, but
No, I don't need the details. I just wanted to know that you've answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So we're trying to have a optimal plan and then a plan B. We're doing all efforts to not lose this funding. So any other questions? That's pretty much my presentation for the business amenity grant. There's some things up in the air. We'll have more information by the end of this week. And we'll know more on how to move forward with it. Okay, so I will move on to a open space project that I'm working on. Let me switch over on my files here. Okay, I think I did that wrong. Hold on a second. Okay.
Is it one of your top 10? Yep.
Yep, okay. So I've been a part of the age-friendly Chelmsford effort since the beginning when Deb Sirianni began leading the group. I've done some work on age-friendly prior, as you may know. So we've reached the point where we're ready to move forward on creating a pocket park, age-friendly pocket park. If you're not familiar with a pocket park, it's basically a small area of land that's underutilized, publicly owned. So we're getting ready to move forward with this. We've identified the location, which is here at the intersection of Worthing Street and North Road. And I put up a map here. We have been looking at this site. I've been looking at this site for over a year or so. We've met with the abutters. They're very involved. We've met on site to begin the initial steps. So here are the initial steps here. The Chelmsford DPW, if you're not aware, will be doing some site work that includes removing this access road that's between Blake Funeral Home and the traffic island. And what that will do is create a much larger publicly owned piece of land that we would like to consider creating a pocket park. And it'll be a multi-purposed park, mostly to create awareness about our community as being age-friendly and livable for all ages. And also, for visitors to maybe have a brief moment to visit or reflection. So there's a lot of details that I can provide if interested, but we are partnered with Four Seasons Greenery. They moved into the Crossroads on 129 recently, and they are very excited to partner with us and provide some landscape design and architectural landscaping. We do have a sponsor to pay for the landscape design cost, and Blake Funeral Home has very graciously provided offerings to sponsor some needs of landscaping for irrigation and other things. They're very accessible and involved in conversation with us as we work towards development of this. So when we have a design ready from Four Seasons Greenery. We'll be sharing that. And there will be other sponsorship opportunities for businesses or families to be involved in supporting aspects of the age-friendly Chelmsford Park.
Lisa, any chance you could ask the tree committee for any input on trees that would be going in that park?
So we've talked about trees. We do know that the large pine there will likely have to come down. We've talked about it in all different aspects, but it really needs to come down for different reasons, you know, for the design reasons, for the DPW and maintenance reasons, things like that. But we do have a plan for tree replanting, and I can certainly include the committee as well. We want to make sure that it coordinates with any other streetscaping that might happen along the road as we lead into Center Village, and connecting with the garden clubs and all those types of things. So there's a lot of variables and moving parts right now. Certainly we'll involve the committee, and
Thank you.
Any other feedback or input. You know, we're just in the initial steps and design. So once we have a first take on the design, that's just a draft. We'll be, you know, reworking that and including everyone through the process. So here's some other comments about next steps. And like I had mentioned, you know, highly visible. It's a way to promote the program and the community. It's a great initiative, and looking forward to starting to orchestrate some of this. And we've been talking about a botanical garden and some engraving and some unique and special aspects to it. So as that comes together, I'll be sharing more with you.
Lisa, when you said that what part of the road are they looking to close off? Is it just that side of the triangle on Worthen Street, or are you looking at Worthen all the way to Westford Road?
So it's actually, you'll see the driveway access here with Blake Funeral Home on this photo.
Yeah.
That stretch is what they'll be removing for the roadway. And then the access to the driveway will be restructured. That won't, you know, it's not going to impede your property at all. But
That's not my question is past Blake Funeral Home. This road extends and it connects with
right.
Westford Street, and a lot of people use that road. And you can see where you can go from Worthen to Route 4 on the other side of the triangle.
Virginia,
so are you talking
Virginia,
about closing the whole?
No, you're way too far. It's the edge of the triangle.
Just the edge of the, that's my question. Was it just the edge of the triangle?
Yeah, so the cars will come down Worthen to that sort of that stop next to the yellow house.
Yeah.
And then come in and out there. If you're coming down in Route 4 heading towards the center, you'd have to take a right at the end of the triangle to come down that road.
Okay, thank you.
And it will all be, it's all engineered through the DPW, and they'll be sharing some of that site work as well for proper, you know, traffic control and turning. There's a bus stop over there as well. Signage, all of those types of things are all in discussion. And I think that's it for my update for this evening. So if there's any other questions regarding the park project. Okay, great. All right, thanks for the opportunity to share some good news and some great information. I'm available if anybody else has any questions. You can contact me in my.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to item 9 on the agenda, the sign warrant for June 22nd special town meeting. Paul?
No, Mr. Chairman, you've got an item before that. Jen Melanson is on the broadcast.
Oh, I keep jumping here. I'm sorry. Jen, I apologize so much.
No
You're right,
worries.
last one, community services.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, everybody. Nice to see everyone here. So I'm here to talk about an opportunity that I was just made aware of last week. It's a grant opportunity, block grant opportunity through the Department of Housing and Community Development. I submitted a document to you folks that gives you a little bit of information. I don't think it's necessary to share the document on screen. It's really there just for folks if they want to learn a little bit more information and specifics about this block grant. But essentially, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and using monies that have been made available through the CARES Act, there are block grants available to communities to be used both for micro enterprise assistance and for public social services. So obviously it's public social services that concerns me. And they give some recommendations on what some of this money could be used for. And one of the recommendations that they make is to be used for food assistance, everything from food banks to food delivery and access programs. So to assist individuals that are having difficulty accessing food as a result of the pandemic. So if you remember the last time that I was here and I gave an update, which I think was maybe back in early February, something like that, seems a lifetime ago, really. Might have even been January, but I talked about that one of the initiatives I was sort of tackling or wanting to tackle this year came in response to the Greater Lowell Health Alliance's most recent community health needs assessment that was conducted and released just this past fall. And for Chelmsford residents, one of the top needs that they identified was increasing access to healthy foods. So even before the pandemic hit, I already was working to address that, and hopefully you know about and maybe have even seen the raised bed gardens that have been installed behind the town offices. This is a result of this initiative and sort of helping to increase access to healthy foods for our residents. And I'm very happy to say too that I've gotten some sponsorship money for that, and also a large portion of that is being covered by the Age Friendly grant that was awarded to the town as well. So so that was a tremendous project that is really starting to come underway, and then the pandemic hits, and the community's need for food has increased tremendously. So I know that you're aware that the Chelmsford Public Schools have been addressing this need by providing grab-and-go meals to the community, not just for school families, but for, they've been gracious enough to open it up really to anybody in the community who is in need of a meal. And there's been a tremendous response to this. When I spoke with Nancy Antolini, the Director of Food Services for the public schools, she told me that at minimum, they're providing meals to 40 families a day. So I think at the height, they were seeing 70 and more families a day. It's dropped off a little bit, but still 40 families a day. And that's a lot of food that they're giving out. And that program is going to end at the end of next week. June 12th is the last day right now that is slated for the public schools to be providing these grab-and-go meals. So that means that there are a lot of families that are going to be left missing out on something that they've really become dependent on in the last few months. So my intention is to pursue some of this block grant money to hopefully keep providing meals for these families that have really displayed the need for this. I think, we're very fortunate that things are slowing down with the pandemic here in Massachusetts, and we're starting to look at opening things up. And I know, in this meeting alone, we talked about opening up restaurants soon. But as things open up, it doesn't necessarily mean that the needs of our community go away. I think we know that not everybody is going back to work, or not everybody has jobs to go back to. I believe our town manager at last week's finance committee mentioned that we're looking at an unemployment rate of somewhere around 25%. Correct me if I'm wrong in that, but that's a lot of people that are unemployed and needing assistance. So, I'm in the very early stages of planning this, because as I said, I only became aware of this grant opportunity last week. And the grant application is due next Friday, June 12th, so I don't have a lot of time to work with. It's a pretty simple application process, though. They're not asking for a lot of specifics, so I think there is room for sort of estimating and a little leeway for error as well. But mainly I'm here just to inform the board and also the community and the public that it is my intention to pursue funding to try to keep providing assistance in the form of food assistance to our residents in need here in Chelmsford. So, if there are any questions, I'll take them. I am not 100% sure I'll be able to answer them, but I'll do my best.
Anybody?
And I also encourage anyone in the community.
Oh, hold on 1 second. Emily has it looked like Emily had a question. Emily, did you have a question?
Yeah, I know that a few years ago there was a program through the state EBT funds that was allowing folks to basically get double their value at farmers markets with their EBT cards. And we do have pandemic EBT benefits right now that are helping out a lot of people. And I'm wondering if that applies to that, and if the folks who are new to EBT and EBT cards are aware, and if that program is still going on, because that's another great way if we can figure out ways of getting people to farm stands and farmers markets.
Yes, I agree with that. And I have not heard an update on whether or not our farmers market here in Chelmsford is planning on being up and running. It was actually a question that a member of the Board of Health had asked me if I had heard anything about last week, and I haven't. So I don't know what their plans are for the farmers market for this year and how the pandemic affects that. And I don't know whether, let me just clarify. I think you're asking if, two questions here, if the EBT funds are still, that program exists where they double for use at farmers markets, right? And then the second question is, will the folks who are receiving the pandemic EBT assistance also be able to receive that double benefit? Is that the other question?
Yeah, that, and do they know about it? Because
they know about it, right?
Because I know Farmer Dave's had figured out a way to get the EBT benefits to pay for the CSA shares. So it helped spread it out, but it also focused it specifically on very fresh vegetables and fruit.
Right. And before this pandemic hit, that was sort of something that was on my list of things to look into, because to my knowledge, the Chelmsford Farmers Market does not accept EBT payment. And so I was wanting to connect with Farmer Dave and also with Mill City Grows to learn about the process of being able to connect the EBT program to our farmers market here so that we could have residents use their EBT cards here in Chelmsford. So hadn't quite gotten that far yet, but and I'll be honest and say that I don't know the answers to the questions that you're asking, but definitely we'll look into and spread that information if it is in fact something that's available to our folks that are receiving the pandemic EBT benefits.
Great.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you very
You're
much.
doing great work. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, with that, Paul, I'll turn over you for the sign the warrant for the June 22nd special town meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. 11 days ago, when we had the joint meeting with the school committee and the finance committee, and we sort of contemplated the closeout of the fiscal year, the one item that we discussed that has to be addressed was the unforeseen expenditure that arose during the pandemic crisis, which was the sewer main break at the adjacent to the Southwell sewer pump station. So I prepared for you approval a one article special town meeting warrant that would be held 3 weeks from this evening on Monday, June 22nd at the Chelmsford High School Gymnasium at 220 Richardson Road. And the meeting would begin at 7:35 p.m. and that's to transfer $710,411 from Sewer Enterprise Fund free cash into the fiscal year 2020 sewer enterprise fund operating budget that was voted under Article 11 of the April 29th, 2019 spring annual town meeting for the purpose of paying for the cost to repair a sewer force main break adjacent to the Southwell pumping station. So if you approve this evening, a special town meeting warrant, as the board may be aware, the community aware, it requires a 14-day posting requirement. So again, we're 21 days out. Your approval this evening, we will then hand it off to the constable and have it posted prior to next Monday, so that we can take this business item up at the conclusion of the spring annual town meeting, which begins that evening in 3 weeks, in which we hope to conclude that evening as well. So the appropriate action will be a motion to approve the warrant for the special town meeting on Monday, April 22nd. Monday, June 22nd, as presented.
Thank you, Town Manager.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to sign and post the warrant for the special town meeting to be held at 7:35 p.m. on June 22nd at the Chelmsford High School gym.
Second.
A motion is second. All in favor, Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
And I will vote aye.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Paul.
So Ken, while we're talking about town meetings, I know a little bit further on down under town manager reports, we're due to review the budget and the rest of the annual town meeting. I wonder if we could postpone that discussion, because we've already been at this for 3 hours, and those are quite lengthy presentations, and possibly have a meeting next Monday to go over those two. I really think they, especially given the situations we're under, that they deserve some special attention.
I would very much support that. I'm exhausted and I gotta get up early tomorrow, so.
We can still do some of the other things on the agenda. Some of them, most of the rest of it looks pretty quick. But I would just ask that we postpone that discussion.
All right, so do you want to just keep moving through the town manager's bid awards, and then we'll jump over the ones you want as we get further down?
Sure, that'll work.
Or do you want to,
Well,
or do you want to stop now?
George, are you available on Monday?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, I think there's probably a couple that are timely, like under the MVP program grant letter that is requested. As far as the others, perhaps they could wait. Maybe Paul would have a better sense for that.
Yeah, I can move through the business pretty quickly, but do it justice at the same time. So there's really nothing and you can stop me at any time, but I'll try to move this along pretty quickly, but be efficient. The next item would be bid awards. This is I'm seeking your approval for the bid award for Cushing Place. This was a state MassWorks grant regarding the housing project that's developed in the center that's now complete. The DPW issued the bid proposals. 4 documents bid proposals were received. We're seeking a bid award to Aqualine for the base bid in the amount of $387,285.35 for this project. And again, this is not town monies, this is state MassWorks monies, which again, we want to utilize this before, as you saw the concerns from Lisa, is you want to get these monies in the process and committed before the end of the fiscal year.
So Paul, we're not going to do the alternate, just the base, is that correct?
No, the funding for the alternate exceeds the budget. It was the installation of a large vault, which is why it's so significant of additional cost, which would have also assisted the underground product next phase. But at this point, we're just going to go with the base bid.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the town manager's bid award for the utilities at Cushing Place to Aqualine Utility, an amount of $387,285.35.
A second.
We have a motion second. All in favor, Pat?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
I vote aye.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Into my reports, first item, rather efficiently, the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program Action Grant. You may recall that for this current fiscal year, we awarded a grant amount of $83,545 to undertake the design for the replacement of the culverts on Dunsha Drive. We're now seeking the grant, of course, amount to the amount of $550,000 to actually do the construction work in the new fiscal year. So what we're seeking is your approval of a letter of support for this grant application.
I'll make a motion that we approve the letter of support for the phase 2 of the MVP grant as presented.
Second.
We have a motion second. All in favor, Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
And I will vote aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item is real brief. I included in the packets is the Aggregate Industries Combustion Test Report. There's no need to go through it. Fire Chief Gary Ryan provided this, and the reason I wanted to put this on here is to let you know that town officials, including the fire chief, are continuing to monitor the aggregate plant's operations and funding. And in fact, he's also trying to seek if we can do a tour of the site in the near future. And once we get that date, I'll notify the board in case you're available and interested in wanting to go out and tour the plant, off of Littleton Road. So that's the purpose for putting that on the agenda. The next item I
have to a question about that. Does that say that it's doing a good job or fair or?
Gary, do you want to just provide a quick summary on that?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so the results that the town manager presented are done every 3 years, and that is for Mass DEP. So the notion that was put forth earlier that we're not having testing done is incorrect. This is, if you look at this report, it will show you that they are monitoring their plant, and they do so for various reasons. 1, for safety for their employees. 2, for safety of the residents. But 3, they want to make sure that their machines, their plant is running efficiently for their product. So this is done. This is done every 3 years, and they are going to be doing another one in June. And they have extended an invitation to myself and some town officials to kind of see how they go about the process.
Gary, just so you know, I did share the report, and I'm just quickly scrolling through the times and the testing and everything so people can see, that it's there and it's online. They can download the report if anybody wants to see this.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next item is the Pine Hill Chapter 61A land clarification from Town Council. The question arose last meeting about, well, given the fact that the land off of Pine Hill Road is not undergoing a sale, but is going to go a lease for solar purposes, does the town still have the right of first refusal? And I'll just read the quotation from council. In the case of intended or determined conversion not involving sale, which is what this is, the municipality shall have an option to purchase the land at full and fair market value to be determined by an impartial appraisal performed by a certified appraisal hired at the expense of the municipality or its assignee. The original appraisal to be completed and delivered to the landowner within 30 days after the notice of conversion to the municipality. In the event the landowner is dissatisfied with the original appraisal, the landowner may, at the landowner's expense, contract for a second appraisal to be completed within 60 days after the delivery of the notice to convert. If after completion of second appraisal, the parties cannot agree on a consideration, the parties will contract with a mutually acceptable appraiser for a third appraisal whose cost shall be borne equally by both parties. The third appraisal shall be delivered to both parties within 90 days after the notice of conversion to the municipality and shall be the final determination of consideration. Upon agreement of a consideration, the city or town shall then have 120 days to exercise this option. During the appraisal process, the landowner may revoke the intent to convert at any time with no recourse to either party. So the bottom line is, in this case, where someone has land that's taxed and as in this case agricultural open space land, and then they do it for another purpose as opposed to sale, which in this case is for solar farm, the town does have that right. Here's where things stand on this parcel as well as the Misty Meadows and such. following your last meeting, I sent a notice out to the boards who had actually already received the official notice in many cases of the withdrawal from chapter land for this parcel on the northerly side of Pine Hill Road, for Misty Meadows, and so forth. Long story short, the Land Conservation Trust is going to meet this Wednesday afternoon. I spoke to Dale Williams, the president of the trust, today. They are obviously interested in what's going on with open space preservation in town. And then the Community Preservation Committee will be meeting on the 2 weeks from Wednesday on the 17th of this month to consider these parcels that are considered for open space acquisition. And then the conservation will also be meeting this month to discuss these parcels. Why this is significant is two of the parcels, namely Misty Meadows and the Pole Warren parcel, are 1 and 2 on the list of the open space plan and conservation list of desired parcels. So long story short, I expect that by the end of the month, at your meeting on the 29th, we'll have a clear direction in terms of whether the town wishes to exercise the right of first refusal, most likely funding source being in that case through the Community Preservation Fund, and then we proceed at that point in time. So I just wanted to let you know that's what's going on. So in terms of what's taking place at this time. So that's where things stand. And as I said, within 4 weeks from tonight, we should have a direction. So we can either do one of two things: notify the landowners, no thanks, go about your business, complete your transactions, or the town wishes to exercise or assign its right of refusal. And if that's the case of the town exercising, you're looking at probably calling a special town meeting. And if it's a sign of assigning its first refusal, then the assigning that right to a third party. So again, I know the land trust is interested in either holding the conservation restriction like they do on other town-owned lands. But really, the timing is actually good for community preservation, because this fiscal year that starts next month, they'll be paying down the final year of the notes for the 2 town hall projects, which were a significant debt portion of their portfolio. So that's what things stand. As I said, we should have feedback from all these open space and conservation entities within the next 4 weeks at two meetings from now. So that's where that stands. Town operations under COVID-19. I'll be real brief with that. Most important thing to note since the last meeting is a week ago tomorrow, the day after Memorial Day, we did a soft opening of the town offices. The doors reopened to the public. Things have gone remarkably well. As you can imagine, the stream of people in the building is not heavy, but things have gone well, in terms of employee training, in terms of the safety measures, the floor markings, the signage, and so forth. And also the library began a week ago tomorrow, the day after Memorial Day. They began with the curbside pickup of library materials, and that's gone well as well. So our next step is the town election, which is scheduled for tomorrow, and in all indications, what I saw taking place today, that'll be prepared. The weather's cooperating, and everything we expect will go smoothly tomorrow. And then the last thing, and probably the most notable thing, was the closure of the town beach. As you know, the unseasonably warm weather brought out quite a few crowds in the middle of last week to Hart Pond and Varney Playground Beach at Freeman Lake. And from what I was informed by the public health director, both she, Sue Rosa as health director, and Anne Marie Rourke, the chair of the Board of Health, were inundated with calls in Anne Marie Rourke's case at work, and Sue's case, her work for the town, regarding people not conforming to the public safety guidelines from the state in terms of the regulations in terms of facial coverings and distancing and so forth. So upon the order of the Board of Health, those beaches were closed. The perimeter fencing was installed. The Board of Health met earlier this evening. I don't know what action they may have taken in terms of a estimated date in which they may reconsider or take further action on this. But at this point in time, the beaches are closed, much like the dog park experience, where when they were open, there were issues that the Board of Health determined to be a threat to the public health in accordance with the state's guidelines. So that's where we stand at this point in time, Mr. Chairman.
So Paul, on that topic, is it solely in the hands of the Board of Health?
Yes. Yes. I think people, and I've often said this, and I think people are realizing it now, the most powerful board in a community is the Board of Health. Because they have a determination of public health in terms of safety, and that goes in terms of condemning restaurants, closing restaurants, or in this case, taking an action in the interest of public health, where they basically directed the closure of the public beaches in the interest of public health. So it's their call.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, and then the final item I'll pass over for the warrant article presentation. I do have some appointments for you, one of which is actually yours. The Board of Registrars, a 3-year term expiring June 30th, 2023. As you see in the packet, Christina sent out notices to the Democratic and Republican town committees. The only nomination that came back was from the Republican Town Committee. That was for the renomination of Jim Lane for a 3-year term as a member of the Board of Registrars.
Make a motion that we reappoint Jim Lane to the Board of Registrars for a term from July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2023.
Second.
Is that a second? Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
Somebody second.
What was that?
Somebody seconded it.
Emily did.
I did.
Okay.
I said second. Sorry.
I heard you second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Next item is annual appointments. You can see the list that was provided in your packet. The first part of the appointments are those by the Board of Selectmen. These are all reappointments, and then the remainder are for the other town boards. So I would ask the board to approve the reappointments as presented.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Do we have to separate the military community covenant and the stormwater? Because Pat's on that one and Emily's on the other. Do we have to vote on those separately, or can?
No, there's no conflict with them holding another position.
They can vote the whole thing?
Yeah, yes.
Thank you. I just thought I'd ask.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the annual reappointments for Board of Selectmen committees and town manager committees as presented.
I second that.
Thank you, Emily. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Virginia?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Thank you. And then the only one new appointment I have is to appoint Barry Jefferson of Bridle Road to the Roberts Field Advisory Committee. He's been acting as a supporting role in the past 4 years and is presently a vice chair of the Friends of Roberts Field. So that would be a appointment with a term, unexpired term ending June 30th, 2021.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the town manager's appointment of Barry Jefferson to the Roberts Field Advisory Committee as presented.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, Virginia?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Thank you, Sharon. That concludes my report this evening.
Okay, let me, I went to click to the agenda and it just is rebooting on me. So you'll have to bear with me 1 second unless someone can tell me what the next item is.
Next one is to schedule a town accountant's performance appraisal.
Oh, Darlene, okay.
Yeah.
How do you want to do it this year? Do you want to do it the same as we did last year? 2 people, I don't think last year we all went. I think 2 people went.
No, we have to do it individually.
Right, no, but what I mean is we didn't all go talk to her. I think last year 2 of us went individually and talked to her.
I think they're trying to schedule the actual review in a public meeting, not the preparation for it.
Oh, I thought, okay.
What are we trying to schedule?
Yeah, what are we trying to schedule? Us going to chat with her or to do it publicly? To do the public?
Well,
I think it's the public date of when you want to.
Right. So
Oh, I know.
what's the end date?
So talk to her before that time. Okay.
The end of June?
I mean, we can do her review. Could we have it done by the meeting that you're gonna have, the
4
second
weeks.
meeting in June?
4 weeks from tonight, the 29th.
Or we could
Would
do
it be
the
possible to get it to,
15th. I think next Monday might be a little too quick, but I would think the 18th would be doable. I mean, the 15th.
I mean, if we could do the 18th, I'd,
15th.
but just to reconfirm how we did it last year, so we're aware of what has to be done, because I thought one year we each individually, 5 of us went and talked to her, and as it turned out, only 3 of us were able to do it. And then last year, because of what happened in the previous year, we decided that only 2 of us were going to go talk to her individually and merge our sort of review. But you tell me how you want to do it, because if it's 2 of us, the 18th is probably doable. If it's 5 of us, not to chew up all of Darlene's time, she might need a little more time to meet with 5 of us.
Last year you asked for input from all of us.
Right. You did.
Did we?
So,
Okay.
and it was up to us to talk to her if we wanted to talk to her.
Right, exactly. And I think that's
Okay.
the best way to do it.
And we got input from her. So in this cycle, we also have to account for giving her time to give us input.
Correct. And so if we're gonna let all 5, then we probably should go to the end of June.
I think so.
Just for timing. Yeah. So that would, for me, it would be the end of June. It would be my thought then.
And maybe
All right,
we should set a deadline for when each of us should individually go see her if we want to, so that we can get that information to you, get our thoughts.
Yeah, if I have to compile it, then I'd prefer to have it by like the 15th. Give you 2 weeks.
That's fine with me.
All right.
So Ken, will you ask Darlene or she's on the call?
I think she dropped off.
Okay. Just send us her inputs against the goals that she had for this year.
I can.
Her review last year had a set of objectives, so if we could get
Right.
her, that would be good.
Okay. That would save, I think the way I did it last year is I went in and we went through her previous year's goals. I got her feedback. That would save the time of her not having to go back through that with everybody individually. So that's a good time saving move if I ask for that up front. All right. Selectmen liaison reports and referrals. Virginia, you want to start?
Sure, I have a couple. The school committee would just like to announce that the high school has set a date for their graduation ceremony. It'll be held on Saturday, August 8th with a rain date of Sunday, August 9th. And there are 3 or 4 different scenarios. It'll be held at the athletic fields at Chelmsford High School, ideally. And depending on where the public health status goes will depend on how they actually implement it. The Conservation Commission, as Paul mentioned, the meeting date is going to be June 26th, where they are going to discuss the potential acquisition of Misty Meadows and Warren Pole for conservation and open space.
Friday?
Well, that's what I was told, was it was June 26th.
Okay.
That date may be off. Maybe it's the 25th.
Okay, it'll be on the calendar.
It's usually, yeah, they're usually on a Thursday, I think. And then the Finance Committee would just like to remind folks that they are planning on voting on their recommendations for the town meeting warrants this Thursday, and they are having an earlier start time than usual at 6:30, and will also allow for public comment before and after they vote.
Thank you, Virginia. Emily.
Got nothing.
Okay, George?
All set. Thank you.
Okay, Pat?
Yeah, just a couple of things. One, just to repeat what Paul said earlier about the library, they have restarted their curbside service. So if you need a book or two or three to read, they'll provide those for you. Just email or call them to set that up. And also want to send condolences to the family of Eileen Duffy. Eileen passed away last week. She was very well known in town. She served many, many, many years on the Zoning Board of Appeals, served as a mentor to many of the current members of the Board of Appeals, and she will definitely be missed.
And I don't have anything. So with that, we'll go to press questions. We don't usually have that on the agenda, but I saw it. So,
We always have that on the agenda.
well, we haven't had it on the agenda on Zoom. Oh, hold on one second. I have a question here from someone.
Did the press?
Nope, Jim Spinney would like to make a.
Jump in when it's a free moment, if I may, when it's available.
Yep. Yeah, you're unmuted. You're good to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, good evening. I should have brought this up to an open session. I have gotten some emails from the community today. So I think it's important that I express to the board that I, along with the men and women of the Chelmsford Police Department, are disgusted with what has occurred in Minneapolis with the death of George Floyd. I can assure you that the Chelmsford Police Department puts the highest regard with community policing, collaboration, communication, and partnerships with the people of this community. And that'll always be a priority for us. We have very strict rules and regulations, policies and procedures, along with real-time supervisory oversight at almost all serious incidents in town. And I feel very confident that what has occurred there cannot occur here. It will not be tolerated. It will never be tolerated. So I felt it was important to express our feelings at the police department to this board in case you get questions from constituents, et cetera. I have had a few people reach out. I've reached back with my thoughts. So has the Massachusetts Chiefs of Police Association and others. So if you have any questions as we move forward with this crisis, please, you can always contact me directly, and I'll reach out to any resident that has a concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. All right, with that, and I did not see any press questions in the chat box or anything, so we'll move to, we're going to go into executive session now to return to open session to talk about the firefighters and the clerical union. So do we have a motion?
Make a motion that we adjourn to executive session. We will return to open session. We'll be discussing the strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the firefighters union and strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the clerical union.
Second.
All right, so now this is, I'm just going to, let's go through the votes. I'm sorry, Emily, you seconded. Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
And I vote aye. And now this is where it's going to get tough. And Pete, you can correct me, but I think I have to go and put everybody into the waiting room. And then when we are done, if you're in the waiting room, we will pull you back into the meeting.